Hey everyone, Nicole here to walk you through NFL Quick Stacks. We're going to the Stacks section, which is available for all premium members, and we're going to look at primary, second, and third stacks. These are rules for different games across your lineups. So if I want 3 games and stacks of those games in a lineup, I can do that. We're going to start off with a simple quarterback wide receiver pairing. And down here you'll see all and none. So you can choose which teams you want to apply this to. So for example, if I turn this on for all of my lineups and I just choose Baltimore, this means Baltimore is team 1 here. If I wanted to do anything with Cleveland, they would go in team 2. I can then go on and say I want to add, I'm going to make a running back tight end defense stack so it's easy for us to see. And I'm going to leave this at all or none. Because Baltimore's chosen over here, Baltimore won't be chosen in this second game and Cleveland won't either, but we're just going to set this up and run a few lineups so you can see. All right, for the second game here, it seems to have chosen the Raiders because I have tight end, running back, and defense there. And then you'll see my Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown in all my lineups. So Lamar Jackson is owned at 100% because of the way I set this up. And I seem to have gotten a lot of Raiders for that second stack. Well, now I can go in and make additional rules, right? I can add another second game stack and a different kind of rule. I could maybe make this target 50% and then put that in there. I can delete or turn off any of these rules at any time, just like with groups with the enabled and the delete buttons. What I'm going to show you next, though, is I'm going to make a wide receiver and a wide receiver opponent stack, and I'm going to just choose Green Bay, Minnesota game here. And when I put this in at 100%, we're going to see that third game correlation I talked about. So if these numbers go over 100%, it's still going to try to choose what's most optimal based on all your other settings. But now the way I have it set up is you're going to see 3 guys, at least 2 of them from 3 different games in all of these lineups. So here we got Lazard with Thielen, with our Raiders stack that we had, and Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown. So you can just keep adding rules like that until you're satisfied with the different kinds of stack correlations you want. Until next time, this has been Nicole Valencia for the Lineup HQ 2-Minute Drill.
Is finally time. What's going on, RotoGrinders? It is RotoGrinders Grinders Live. I'm Dean. That's Dean78904 if you want to get all technical. That is the daily fantasy handle that will be in all the football contests today. It's NFL. It's week 1. Get excited. 10:30 in the East Coast, 7:30 in the morning on the West Coast. Good morning, West Coast. 9:30 Tennessee time. Of course, I mean, it's time for the flagship show here at RotoGrinders. It's called Grinders Live. Joining me today, as this will be the usual suspects of this entire season. That is the lineup going forward. We're talking some football. It's Andre, I believe are you still in Vegas now or no?
Oh no, I'm back home.
You're back home. How was Vegas? Good time?
Gotta get those lineups in, Dean.
I don't know. We could have taken a trip to the border.
Been there before.
Vegas was okay. Lost some money gambling a little bit, on the roulette table, but other than that, I had a great time. And then entered my survivor picks from Circa, which has a nice little bit of overlay. Look forward to hopefully taking that down and see how far I can go.
Andre, you're too sharp to play roulette. Come on. It's fun just to kind of pick numbers and everything, but you're not supposed to win that.
Oh, I win a good amount of money actually off roulette. I'm surprised. I tend to pick right, but this time around, Vegas got me. So I'll be back there. I'll be back there Wednesday to place my picks again, and then play a little bit and see what happens.
All right, fair enough. Talking about week one, you were talking pre-show, like week one, you said this is the week you always dominate. And like, look, we all think we know what's going to happen. We all like have these predetermined ideas, and some things are going to be right. Houston probably is going to be terrible, but there's some things we're absolutely going to be wrong on. And I guess your main strategy would be to embrace that variance and use that so-called knowledge against people who think they know exactly what's going to happen. And there's tons of variance in football. So your general approach as far as the slate today, before we dig it in, we're going to obviously talk to by position, quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, defenses, stacks. We're going to get all your questions there in chat as well. Start loading up those questions, Devin, producer extraordinaire. He's compiling those questions for sure, and he'll be firing them my way later on, and these fine gentlemen will be answering for you. But your general thought as far as this main 13-game slate?
Yeah, definitely. It's embrace the variance, like you said, and try to be different. But it's just not going to be hard because everyone's going to be playing a lot of concentrated plays. I feel somewhat mainly at receiver, and I feel in running back a little bit, and ignoring certain areas, and even some quarterbacks. But we don't know pretty much what's going to happen this year so far. It's week one. It's the most variable week. It's the best, to me, it's the best time for mass multi-enters to win GPPs and take them down, because at least people like me, I like to take chances. I run a lot of lineups. I'll take chances and play different players, different guys, and different situations, as long as they're in a good matchup and the cornerbacks are weak and based off the injury report and the COVID list that we have to worry about right now. And to see what I can take advantage of and try to use that to my advantage, and see about games that have lower totals I can possibly go over.
Yeah, speaking of the best time to mass multi-enter, do you want to mention Yahoo? We're going to give some Yahoo-specific plays later on in the show, and in my opinion, they're running the best contest in the business right now, and I know they're the sponsor, but I'm in for 150. I maxed out, putting the old money behind my mouth, behind the sponsor.
Is there CSV edit on there?
Yeah,
I think so. I mean, that's how I fired. So I have them all in there, and then I don't know how to see it. I don't know how to do that anyway. Like that's not something I don't normally mass multi.
Gosh, you are old.
Dean, so you're gonna hand build after the show 150 lineups?
No. Well, when he says edit, I assume that means like after they're already in, you can go over and override a 150. But no, I imported 150.
Okay.
Yeah. So that wasn't an issue at all. But well, what did you killed the promo, Grant? I was going to introduce you. We're going to knock out the promo.
No one cares what you have to say. Guys, play on Yahoo. It's got $1 million contest. Getting those super veterans out of the way here. Don't have to worry about going up against them, but apparently I'm not a super veteran, so you have to worry about going up against me. But free $25 bonus for using the promo code GRINDERS25 on your first deposit there. Absolutely fantastic. Got single game slates every Monday, Thursday, Sunday night. So new little format there with no super veterans. $1 million contest, live final, Yahoo Cup for free every week. 150K in prizes. Get in there, and best single season cumulative score on that gets a seat to the live final out in someplace. I think Detroit. No, not Detroit. Over in Pennsylvania at the MGM something, because they're partnered with MGM. Absolutely fantastic contest. Actually fantastic place to play. I'll be there. Get on in there.
So the other part of that $1 million contest, that was well done there, Grant. Nice recovery. The other part of that, right now, only 74,500 spots have been claimed out of 100,000 spots. I have 150. Grant, I believe you have 150 as well. And it's $1 million contest, and it's beautiful because it's a flat payout, just 100K to first. I love that, just 10% to first place.
Plus the live final entry.
Yeah, and plus the live final entry. And the other part is, I mean, you buried the lead. There's no rake. No, even if this thing, let's say it maxes out. I don't even know if it's going to max out or not. But let's say it maxes out. You still need 25,000 more entries. There's no rake, none. Like they're not taking 10%, 12%, 15%, 16%, depending on where you're shopping. 0% rake, and there's potential overlay lurking as well. Fire off your 150 for sure there. Grant, nice to see you. Nice to talk to you. Thank you for dressing up. Your thoughts as far as the overall slate that we're looking at. We're going to dig in by position in a second. What are we looking at?
We're looking to party here. I mean, we got all sorts of guys that we can play. There's so much uncertainty in week one. There's so many chalk plays. I mean, just looking straight off the dome here, we got 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 guys over 20% projected ownership. There's going to be chalk, and granted, there's a lot of reason for that, depending on which site you're on, like there's a lot of guys that you can play. It's a ridiculous slate as it is every single week in week one. I think game stacks are going to win out here with a little bit of value sprinkled in here. I plan on game stacking a lot of QBs, a lot of games that really aren't going to go that heavily owned because groupthink is actually a thing. Chalk may hit. I may lose all my money. I don't care. I'm here to take down a lot of money.
Well, you were saying one of the ways to take advantage of a pre-show, like there's 13 games going down tonight, 26 starting quarterbacks, and how many quarterbacks are in your pool? Now, this obviously changes depending on the sites you're shopping on. There's different rules and all that, but amongst the 26 pitchers, this is not baseball. Baseball contest, really, really small today. Have at it. Enjoy yourself. You're playing baseball. Amongst the 26 quarterbacks throwing footballs today, how many quarterbacks are you going to be rostering around the industry?
26.
There you go. Well, take a stand, Grant. You got to like. I mean, what do you mean? You like all of them?
I mean, every single one of them has viability on different sites. I mean, I'm not going to play certain cheap QBs over on Draftkings. I will play those same QBs over on Yahoo, and then on Super Draft, there's some really high multiple guys. Like I have no interest in Tyrod Taylor, but over on Super Draft, a little bit different story. At 1.65x multiplier with some high multiplier wide receivers. All you need is one broken play, one 60-yard touchdown, and maybe a rushing touchdown for Taylor. Guess what? That stack pays off real quick.
Also wanted to mention the RotoGrinders OG show NFL leaderboard. Well, week one, the leaderboards, everybody's at 0. But if you guys put a link, Devin, producer extraordinaire, is going to go ahead and drop that link in chat for the people. It's just barely half full right now of 1,000 people, $7 to get in there. And this is one of those deals where there's added value, a cumulative board. I think it's the top 10. Your top 10 scores for the season will get paid out accordingly. You know, I don't know the exact. I think it's like 10K as far as the total prize pool, just free money. And you're playing against, Noto and Chop and Beer. I'm in there as well. I'm not sure if you guys have joined it, but go ahead and, that link's going to get dropped in chat for the people. But as of right now, I don't know if it has to fill or not. Can't confirm that. But if it doesn't fill and it does still go, there will be some overlay there as well. Have at it. Take down the OGs. Of course, check out the OGs podcast, which I believe is recorded like Tuesday or Wednesday night. It's always a fun listen as well. All right, Andre, before we kind of break, dive fully in, your general assessment as far as a strategy, like how much are you stacking? How much does that count? And how much does it matter that some prices, and especially, on DK, it's really, really soft and it's really, really easy to fit in so much stuff because prices came out so early and there's a ton of value out there, and we'll kind of dig into that. And if everybody's too cheap, then like nobody's too cheap, but it's all relative. What is your assessment and how do you take advantage of like some of the goofy prices out there?
Yeah, you're gonna have to play some of the prices mishaps that are on the slate. Regardless, it's probably honestly inevitable because the way these like for instance the receivers, I was looking at trying to find ways to get off of them. So I just made certain groups to just try to limit the exposure to them, but like some of these receivers are just in better positions due to injuries, so they're moving up on the depth chart and outperforming where they're projected to probably be at coming into training camp. So now I try to just use that to my advantage and try to just, like I said, put it in groups to limit those people if I can, and then I'll try to also get more exposure to maybe some of the guys in the middle, but also have at least a good amount of guys in that lower range too, because I think today, especially on DK, you're probably going to have maybe one mid-price player that's probably in your winning GPP lineup. If not, I'll be very surprised, but we'll have to see what happens.
It's the stars and scrubs, kind of jam them in. That it's super obvious to do that. And Grant, would you say that that's a different way to be different in the slate and just kind of just hammer the mid tier? Because I don't think that's going to be a very popular strategy.
Yeah, I mean, almost every single lineup is going to have high-priced running backs, mid-priced wide receivers. They may have a few game stacks in there. They will play a little bit of Devontae Adams, but a little bit of high-priced guys. But people are generally staying away from the mid-tier. I mean, we just look at the running back position, and the highest priced or highest owned guys are top 3, all over 8.5K. Like you look at the mid-tier, and yes, there's some options there. And generally, people are going to go with 1 to 2 mid-tier, or generally 1 mid-tier running back, maybe 1 mid-tier wide receiver, because that's the way lineup construction ends up working out. But a lot of these guys are going to get in at drastically lower ownership than they should be.
Grant, you have some winners for us. Let's tease the people a little bit. You have we'll do it a little bit later. You got some player props on layaway for the people.
I always got player props.
Let's talk quarterbacks. And again, chat, what up? Like, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. Obviously, if you guys are not aware, RotoGrinders.com, we have daily strategy shows they're going to help you with your Fanduel lineups, your Draftkings lineups, your Yahoo lineups. A lot of the shows are going to be free. We have premium content as well, too. Feel free to get to premium content, $10 off your first month. We'll go ahead and drop that link in chat as well. Grant, like, there's not one quarterback that's drawing necessarily a ton of ownership today. There's tons of picks, tons of guys out there. I like, I think there's a pretty clear group of 4 that like I want to get those guys, quarterbacks with legs, multiple ways to get there. Like the Matt Ryans of the world, of course he can throw 400 yards and get 4 touchdowns, but like that's basically his out. That's how he has to get there. I just love the guys that can run for 100 or run for 50 and 2 scores as well. It extends the ceiling so much. It's one of the last positions I'm filling in. Of course, like if I'm stacking, obviously it's one of the places you start as well, but what is your general approach to quarterback? I think it's Mahomes, Kyler Murray, in the best game of the board, far as I can tell, far as anybody can tell. The Arizona-Tennessee game should shoot out. Biggest total on the board. 2 teams should be playing fast against 2 weak defenses, especially in the secondary. And you got Josh Allen, he's a part of pretty much every single touchdown there in Buffalo. And then Jalen Hurts, who's like the cheapest, least appealing, but I like him in a dome as well. Would you agree with that assessment? Those are the 4 most appealing raw points, being a thing.
Yeah, no, they absolutely are. I mean, those guys have legs. They know how to get rushing touchdowns. They get a decent amount of floor just out of the rushing yards. They're all in pretty solid spots. They can all put up a massive outing. In quarterback, while we used to pay down a lot, that we see now more consistently a huge game from a few random quarterbacks where you're almost certainly going to have them, although there is any number of different ways that can go. But one of those guys is likely to go off for a 30-point game. So all of them are great plays. While I think that they are worth it and I will be playing them and I will be eating that ownership, I think there are ways that you can go off the board with guys that at significantly less or slightly less ownership, you can get them in your lineup. They have a chance at a huge outing too.
Just taking a peek here at the ownership, nobody projected a higher than Josh Allen on DK, currently at 13.5%. It's pretty spread out on FanDuel as well, with the highest number is Josh Allen at 15.6%. Andre, your thoughts amongst those 4? Do you have a favorite? Is there anybody going way overweight on? Is there anybody actually crossing out? Your thoughts as far as those 4, and feel free to branch out amongst the other quarterbacks that are playing.
I like Kyler Murray a lot today too as well. Just because it's a fast-paced game and this, like you said, the highest scoring game on the slate probably, but more so just because they're going to be getting a lot of plays, and so I'll have a lot of good amount of exposure to him. But one of my favorite quarterbacks that I found early that I like a lot that he's a little bit priced up. I've obviously priced up, but Russell Wilson.
Yeah,
you mentioned him. Yes,
love Russ
going against Indy. Like he's too his ownership is too low in my opinion. I like targeting him with either DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett today a lot. Even if you want to throw in Everett as far as a tight end, because Russ, when he has a serviceable tight end, he does target them a lot, especially in the red zone. So I love targeting Russ today. And he's probably like one of my favorite, if not my favorite GPP play on the board as far as the top out of the top quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts is fine too, especially in that game with Atlanta. He should be good. Atlanta defense has improved a little bit, but I don't think they improved significantly enough where it's going to affect Hurts and he won't be able to do what he needs to do against them. So it's just more so about finding the targets for him. So I like pairing him with Smith and even having the running back of Miles Sanders too as well. So those are my 2 when it comes to sacking that, and also that way you can run it back on the other side too. With both teams, as far as with the Colts and with Atlanta, which they have some good opportunity, which and concentrated targets shared too between a couple of the guys over that side. And another quarterback that we touched on, I guess yet. Towards the bottom of the slate, I think he's going to come in a lot higher on than what we are projecting him right now. Just because I've been hearing a lot of talk about him is Sam Darnold, who is in a good matchup. I think his ownership is probably too low, but depending on how it is, I might want to get off of him a little bit, but I like him today as well. To me, he's in a great spot against the Jets, who don't really have that many corners. I think they only have, is it like 5 corners available? I think on the roster, sir. Actually, no, that's to the Saints. Sorry. But Sam Darnold is in a good position too as well. And yeah, my other people do not sleep on today. Sorry to go so long is Aaron Rodgers. I'm a Saints fan, obviously, as you can tell, but he might be out to prove something this year again after winning the MVP. And that combination to Adams is going to be it's going to be I think really, really good for them this year. And then I know our top corner Marshawn Lattimore just got added to the injury list this morning. And I don't know if Roby's going to be able to play today because he just got traded from Houston. So he's someone I like a lot too, and Kirk Cousins as well, who's going unowned.
Yeah, stay tuned to 11:30 actives and inactives. I guess we won't have that one because that's a late game. But for the 1 o'clock games, actives and inactives drop. This show, we're going. This stream's going all the way right after the bell, right up the kickoff. Following us is going to be Erik Beimfohr. You know him from such things as Best Ball, and he does a really, really good job as far as breaking things down from a tournament perspective, just kind of looking at things differently. And yards per Gretch, Gretch, he's really, really good at that as well. They're going to be digging in probably more into the minutia, more the details as far as a tournament perspective. This is kind of sort of the overview. We'll dive into that as well, too, of course, going forward. Then Carlucci, Tuttle, and Kristi take you guys all the way up to lock. And then I love Russ as well. And I probably should have included him in the top 4. You got him in the dome. They're expected, in theory. I'm told they're going to play a little bit faster this year. Of course, they played great. They're letting him cook the first half, not so much the second half. And if you care about quarterbacks, I wasn't necessarily afraid of Xavier Rhodes against those Seattle receivers, which, super, super tight as far as it's Lockett, it's Metcalf, and they give a cheap tight end as well, too, which Yahoo specific, I don't mind, as a full punt, $10 for Everett. He's kind of somebody he's worked his way into some of my lineups because of the normal salary cap. And the Darnold play, double revenge if you pair him with Robbie Anderson as well. Robbie Anderson, $14 on Yahoo, Moore's $16 on Yahoo. Both those guys are really, really good plays, even cash game plays from my perspective. Jump in here, Grant, as far as your thoughts on those guys. And the tricky thing with Darnold is I don't know how much I need him. It's just because there's just so much salary savers elsewhere. And I think he could be, in theory, a top 5, top 6 quarterback, and that's good enough, right? But how much do you need Darnold? That's kind of the question, I guess.
You don't. We haven't even talked about the second best quarterback in the league, probably the greatest quarterback of all time.
Oh, is it Fitzpatrick? We're going to start this again?
Oh, am I going to start at the guy who's taken down more milli makers over the last 6 years than any other quarterback?
Is that a fact, or are you just throwing that out there?
2 of the last 5 years, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong here. I don't know. My memory ain't so good in my old age. Sorry, noggin. But yeah, Fitzmagic going up against the Chargers, it's not really a great matchup. It's not really terrible, but he's in a new offense. They're probably going to let him sling. It was a different situation with QB last year. They didn't really have the ability to just let him throw around until they're down in garbage time. But this game only has a 42.75 implied team total, I think. Or, yeah, I don't know. 42 over under. But Fitzmagic, he can put up big outings. I mean, he's got a few decent wide receivers in there. McLaurin and Logan Thomas are probably the obvious stacks there, and I don't think they're going to garner nearly the ownership they should. I don't think a lot of people are going to be playing Fitzpatrick. He's projected at 2.5% in our early projections here. Probably going to be a little bit higher than that, but he's a guy that can absolutely put a 30-point outing. This game could turn into a shootout. You can always bring it back with Eckler. You can always bring it back with Keenan Allen. This is a perfect spot that I think is going to go drastically under-owned because of the total that is currently projected for them. And there's so many 50 total or close to 50 total games that I think people are going to focus more on them. So Fitzmagic is going to come in at a lower ownership. And then Russell Wilson, everything that Dre said, absolutely fantastic play. We know what he was like at the beginning of last season. And guess what? He could potentially be like that again. Yes, Pete Carroll just decided, okay, we're going to run the ball a whole lot later on the season, but I think they have a new OC in there. They could potentially run a different offense. You already mentioned the fact that they're probably going to try and go at a higher pace this year. And Russell Wilson is going to go under 6% owned, potential to put up a massive outing. Metcalf is going to be a larger owned guy, but we know that last year, Lockett or Metcalf, one of them went off for a massive outing pretty much every single week.
Yeah.
So going with Lockett at lower ownership is a great idea. Plus Everett in there, getting off a very high owned Pitts. Everett is probably the best tight end that Wilson's ever had. I mean, Jimmy Graham was in there, but he really wasn't at the top of his game for a long time. Don't really know what's going to happen with the tight end situation, but we have seen guys like Will Dissly go off for massive games at tight end. We've seen, what's his name? Owen Wilson's brother, Luke Wilson. Yeah, go off for massive
different
games.
guy, but same name, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was making a joke there.
I know.
He clearly doesn't act and play professional football. Well, some people do. But yeah, it's just a good spot there. And then one other guy that I think is going a little bit overlooked, Tannehill, we've seen put up massive outings over and over again. Like he's going up against the probably going to be the second fastest paced team in the league. Last season, we saw multiple 30-point outings. Derrick Henry going to be a little bit overlooked, but I think his wide receiver is going to go drastically overlooked. He's got a huge upgrade in Julio Jones coming into the offense here. He should be able to put up a big outing because he always seems to do that when he's at low ownership. Tannehill, if you want to stack up that game, I think he's the better option than Kyler Murray when you incorporate ownership and you incorporate his potential wide receiver outings. So that's kind of where I'm at quarterback. I will be playing a lot of different guys on a lot of different sites, but over on DraftKings specifically, I think the two guys that are the least owned in comparison to what they should be owned and the probability of having a tournament winning lineup is Tannehill and Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I like both those as well. I will have shares. Before we move on to running back, we got to get going. We can't talk about every quarterback, obviously. Andre, if you have any thoughts on those guys, by all means, share them. Or is there any other quarterback you think is worth at least acknowledging, giving a head nod to? Trevor Lawrence is kind of sort of somewhat interesting to me. I don't know how many shares I'm going to grab, but he's certainly somebody I'm going to have at least some lineups. Burrow as well. Anybody else that we should consider, or just want to talk about some running backs?
Like the only other two that I like everything that Grant said. I agree with everything. The only two that I have, I don't think we mentioned, is Matt Ryan, who I like today in tournaments a lot. I like being at least double the field on him, going against the Eagles in that secondary doesn't really scare me with Darius Slay there. And then I'm taking some chances on Carson Wentz. That's a bold call, I know. I know. But to me, first game back, you got to go with the unknown. We don't know how he's going to play. Don't know how he's going to be off that ankle, and that leg and that foot. So we'll see how he goes. But I think getting a little bit of exposure to him in tournaments, if you're mass multi-entering, is something that's the way to go.
Favorite pairing partner for Wentz, is it Pittman?
I like both of them, Pittman and I think what's the other one, Campbell, I believe. Those are the two. Paris Campbell, yeah. So those are the two I really
love. Campbell.
I like pairing them both with them for sure. Because and that's the thing. Everyone's talking about playing these receivers, but you're not playing the quarterback with it. It doesn't make sense to me. So to me, getting a little bit of exposure to Carson Wentz just makes sense to me.
Amongst the most expensive running backs, CMC, Cook, Kamara, Henry, who is your favorite, Andre?
Kamara, Cook, or Henry. I want to say Kamara because of the volume, but I also do like Derrick Henry more so because of the ownership. He's coming in at such low ownership. I like for playing him in GPP to be extremely double the field on him because we already know he's going to get the ball and gonna get at least probably 20 touches regardless, maybe even 25, and it's going to be a fast-paced game still. So to me, I will rank Derrick Henry, then Kamara, and then Cook.
Did I leave out CMC? Throw CMC into the conversation.
Oh, did you say CMC too? Sorry. CMC,
I'm not sure if I did it or not. Doesn't matter. I may have just not said it.
Yeah, but CMC is I like getting to him. I like getting to him today, but to me, I find myself getting less of him as far as compared to the other guys. Honestly.
Grant?
Kamara and Henry, top two.
What about the mid tier? Because Mixon, we have a couple of guys that are probably underpriced, but if everybody's underpriced, it's all sort of relative as far as being underpriced. We're expecting Mixon to be a guy that's going to be on the field basically every single snap. We're expecting Najee Harris, the rookie for Pittsburgh, to be on the field for basically every single snap. Mike Davis, same deal. Like it's not how good you are. Nobody thinks Mike Davis is the most talented running back. Doesn't matter.
I do.
Well, okay. Well, you know what? I don't believe you, but he's got a great opportunity. Getting on the field is the most important thing, and they cleared the way for him, and it's essentially his backfield, far as I can tell. What's your take as far as these mid-tier guys? Mixon, Harris, Davis, CEH on Yahoo, $17 is really, really cheap. What do you have for me as far as the mid-tier? We work our way down.
I mean, Najee Harris sitting at 6.3K, projected around 10% ownership, probably far too low. We don't know exactly what his role will be in this offense or how good he's even going to be in the NFL, but he's still a guy with a lot of potential upside. It's going in at lower ownership because of the way that roster construction is going out for everyone. Miles Sanders, high scoring game, seems to be forgotten, always has the chance to put up a massive outing. Damian Harris, again, new look, New England offense. Hate playing New England running backs, but he's a guy that you can sprinkle in GPPs. He's going to come in at sub 5% ownership in all likelihood. Edmonds, we don't know what this Arizona backfield is going to look like in terms of whatever carry share. I can't remember the word off the top of my head because I'm a big dum-dum and been up since 4 a.m. this morning. But Edmonds is a guy that could potentially put up a pretty big outing. I mean, we've seen huge outings from him before. This was kind of his backfield for a lot of different games last year, and he ended up absolutely crushing. And we've seen it over the last few years. I think he had 1 3-touchdown game at one point. But it's a high score. It's going to be a high scoring game. It's absolutely going to be a high scoring game. And just the way that things are looking, 4.6K, not quite mid-tier, more of a cheap guy that's going to be largely overlooked. Outside of that, I mean, maybe you can take a shot on Swift. We know that Goff really isn't that great. He can get a little bit gun shy, especially when he's getting blitz. He could end up with a lot of dump offs to Swift. But I mean, if you're not going up for the main guys, then the main ones to look at are going to be Edmonds, Najee Harris, and probably Miles Sanders, I think, at GPPs, or even Nick Chubb at 7.2K. This guy can always break off an 80-yard run and put up 30 points, and he's not going to be owned.
No, he's not going to be owned at all. He's got to share the backfield as well, too. And it's funny, Kansas City, just in that same game, is kind of they're going to be kind of sort of somewhat ignored, which is weird.
They aren't. It's just going to be mostly people playing Travis Kelce.
Yeah, but like Mahomes isn't going to get played. Like some, but maybe 6, 7, 8% or something like that.
Mahomes is currently projected as the second highest owned quarterback. What are you talking about?
Hold on a second. Mahomes, okay, 12.5%.
Yeah, you mean the second highest owned quarterback, the second chalkiest quarterback on the slate, going overlooked? Yeah, he's not getting overlooked.
Hold on, Tyreek. Tyreek's not going to get played.
Yes, because everyone's playing.
It's just like Kelsey's got this, has a juggernaut offense, and they should get bigger ownership than others, and it's pretty clear as far as like who's going to be getting the ball as well too.
The better person to target going up against the Browns is the tight end. It's really simple. We know that Kelce has more consistent target share, and Tyreek Hill you generally want to get when he's sub 10% ownership. He's currently projected for 12%. Going with the field is entirely fine because he always has the ability to put up a 40-point outing. But Tyreek Hill is probably getting the amount of ownership he should when we consider that there's so much value at wide receiver that you're giving up other things. And plus you got an absolute stone cold going to get 20 plus points regardless. Devontae Adams on the board.
I was told I'm only allowed to play Kyle Pitts at tight end this week. Is that not true? I can play somebody else?
I mean, you can play Travis Kelce. You can play a few different guys. Pitts is probably going to be the most likely candidate to put up 20 points at this price tag. You look at the other guys in this price tag, and Hawkinson, yes, he can put up a big outing. Logan Thomas, we don't know exactly what his target share is going to be. He's got Fitzmagic at the helm, so we don't know what he's going to be, considering Fitzmagic doesn't like to target tight ends. But outside of McLaurin and Samuel, is Samuel playing today? I can't even remember.
No.
Yeah, so outside of those two guys, outside of McLaurin, really don't know who's going to pass to, and there's a way that they can utilize this and him in this offense, and it may end up with 10 receptions, especially if they're going to be coming from behind later in the game. But outside of that, you're really not looking at a ton of guys that can put up a huge outing. Fant would take an 80-yard catch in order to probably get close to Pitts. Goddard could end up with 7-8 receptions just because he's Goddard, but that's not the most likely scenario now that this entire receiving core is a little bit revamped and Hurts can do a lot on the ground. So you're really not looking at a ton of guys that are going to potentially put up a massive game win or tournament winning outing. So if you're not playing Pitts, then probably the smart move is to pay down $1,500, $1,200, $800 down to these cheaper guys like Everett, like Ferkser. Those guys could potentially put up similar outings to Pitts. Not better, but similar, because there's no guarantee that Pitts puts up a big outing, but more than likely, just based on the target share in this offense, he's going to put up a serviceable outing. I think our floor for him is projected at 7. It's probably closer to 10 is his 20th percentile outcome, but we just don't know because this is a tight end who's a rookie and with no real semblance of.
Grant, I was just making a throwaway joke, and you just went like a 3-minute monologue about tight ends. I guess you just knocked out tight ends for us.
I'm gonna say, well, he knocked out tight ends. We don't have to touch it now, so that's good.
Tight ends can be knocked out with probably play Pitts or Kelce and move on, or if you want to be weird, play literally anyone else because that's what you're doing is mostly throwing darts at the board.
We're not able to talk about everybody, obviously. The chat. What up, chat? Like, subscribe, turn on notifications, fire off some questions. If there's somebody we have not talked about, we're saving some time for your questions. Devin is compiling them. He's going to throw them my way. I'm going to ask these fine gentlemen. Andre, some running backs, got to talk receivers, tight end. We basically did that already. We'll talk some stacks as well. And Grant has some player prop winners for the people as well too.
Should we just go with that now?
Well, I mean, let's give Andre a chance to jump in here.
Well, if I knock this out, Andre can give us the entire thing because I'm excited to hear it because he is better at tournaments than I.
All right. Well, you seem ambitious. All right. So let's tell the people about the promo is for BetMGM. Grant, you're going to give us some picks there from BetMGM and promo code GRINDERSBET, GRINDERSBET. Bet $10 and you get $200 instantly. And you got some winners for the people as far as BetMGM. What do you have for us?
Yeah, Derrick Henry to score. I think he's currently at minus 195 over on BetMGM. Realistically, his chance at scoring is drastically higher than that. I mean, we look at his entire last year, and he scored in 10 out of 16 games, if I remember correctly. I can't remember the playoffs. But in 4 of those games, he was facing 4 of the top 6 best defenses in the league. So he has well over, this is projecting him at a 65% chance of scoring. I think it's drastically higher than that. It's just too low of a line. Probably got a 10% ROI on average placing this bet, even though it's high juice. You want something a little bit lower juice. Najee Harris over 21.5 receiving yards. I think that there's going to be a lot of dump offs. We saw Ben Roethlisberger make quick passes all season long last year. He's got multiple wide receivers. So if they focus a little bit more on them, there's a chance in the passing game that Najee Harris is fully open a decent amount. So 21.5 yards is probably a little bit too low considering when he gets the ball in his hand and if people are covering the wide receivers, because he has 3 talented wide receivers a little bit more, then Najee Harris could easily break off a 20-yard run by himself. But he also is probably going to get plus 3.5 receptions, which I have the over on 3.5 receptions for him too. So it's just a solid overall spot where the Lions are super low because Vegas doesn't really know what he's going to be in this passing offense.
Yeah, he seems blowout proof as well. Andre, jump in here. Clean up those the mid-tier running backs. Who's most appealing for you?
Most appealing. Well, Grant touched on pretty much all the ones I really like a lot. The only one I think he missed out on was Raheem Mostert in San Francisco. I think he's going to get a lot of work this week just because that's how San Francisco does. They run the ball a lot, and I don't think they're going to. I know those are going to be playing split the quarterback home. That's what the quote came out from John Lynch this morning. So I'm playing Garoppolo and playing who's the other guy there? Trey Lance, I believe, or something. I forgot his name, but they're going to be splitting the helm at quarterback.
Ray Sherman.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm talking about the quarterback position too. Sherman's going to get work too. I know that for sure. He may eventually take over the job. But I think Raheem Mostert is going to get a lot of the work week 1, and he has I think he has a good chance of definitely going over and smashing today against Detroit, who's not really a good team defensively at all. Even though they got them probably a little bit better. That's pretty much it at running back. We touched on everyone else. Joe Mixon I like a lot today against Minnesota. I don't think we talked about Aaron Jones today, but Aaron Jones against the Saints. One thing I know about the Saints, like the Saints always have a good have been having a good defense for the past couple of years, but they always get off to a slow and sluggish start. So to me, targeting Aaron Jones week 1 might be a good route to go because he's probably gonna get a little bit more work since it's just pretty much mainly him gonna get a lot of the targets and work in the backfield.
Also worth noting that game is at a neutral site. It's in Jacksonville. It's not in New Orleans. James Robinson on Fanduel's got a really, really good price. Not so much on Yahoo. Nobody's going to roster on Yahoo because that's one price that's kind of exorbitant. And nice price on DK as well too. But I think I prefer Najee Harris and Mixon, Mike Davis, all those guys when you consider salary. Even Gibson, seems a little bit too cheap on DK as well. All right, let's get to move on. Receivers. And I think the conversation, Andre, as far as receivers is just, again, the natural build is spend down at receivers, spend up at the running backs. Of course, you can just flip it and spend up on like the really, really good receivers. There's a whole bunch of those as well. Devontae Adams, Ridley, Diggs, Hopkins, Tyreek, Metcalf, Brown, McLaurin. We can keep reading them off. But, especially on DK, there are some really, really cheap receivers. There's a slew of them that are like 4.1K and under. How are you handling this? Who are your favorite amongst the cheapies?
Yeah, I think I touched on this earlier when I said I'm pretty much with one thing with the optimizer we can do is we can put them in groups. So I took pretty much all the receivers I like from 4.1K and below, which honestly include just Pittman, Campbell, Marvin Jones, Callaway, Marshall, Moore, both Moores, Elijah Moore, and Rondell Moore. So I'm taking them and putting them into a group and having a max of either 0 to 2 in a lineup the most, because I don't want to have my team completely overcrowded with them and be pretty much like everyone else. I want to be different. So to me, if I even get just one of them in my lineups, I'll be more happy just to be different in GPPs. But I think with my exposures, that'll happen. But out of the cheapies, I really do like Pittman a lot. He's someone I think that is going to get targeted a lot. He should be the number 1 receiver, but also Campbell as well. He might come, and he's going to come in like significantly less owned, but he's going to have just as much opportunities, and he has just as much upside as Pittman, being that they're going to probably be the top 2 receivers on the team. So I like getting to them a lot as well. I like being under the field on Marquise Callaway, since he's going to be extremely high owned, even though he can have a good game, and we know how Jameis Winston is when he throws the ball, he can throw the ball and have another 5,000 yard season, which I fully expect. But I just think that this game alone, just for leverage wise, I want to be a little bit lower on him, and I want to take some shots on the other guys that we have here. I like getting Terrence Marshall Jr. from Carolina against the Jets. I think he's gonna be in the slot. He's gonna be the slot receiver. I think he's gonna be the third receiver on the depth chart from when I looked at it before. Robbie Anderson on the outside, and I think more on the other outside. And I think the other guy that they had is pretty much injured out for this game. So the blitz actually loves Terrence. Was giving me a lot of Terrence Marshall Jr. too. So I like getting to that as a value play. He's my favorite probably out of all the lower ones, because he's just the lowest owned one. And then after that would be Rondell Marshall in Arizona, because of the pace of that game and that matchup. And he's going to be pretty much replacing pretty much the secondary receiver, opposite end of
Larry Fitz is gone.
Yeah, he's gonna be the opposite end of what's his name? Who's there?
AJ Green. Oh, Hopkins. Yeah,
Hopkins. I think AJ Green's the third receiver on that team.
You can make yourself an all-more lineup with DJ, Elijah, Rondale. Do you have a take here, Grant? And the Callaway, people talk about Alexander, tough matchup there, but he is the number 1 receiver. I think there's interesting things you can do as far as late swapping. That's a 4:00 game, depending on if you're ahead, if you're behind, moving away from Callaway. If you're behind, as a way to catch up, or even in your 50-50s, man. Like if your opponent has Callaway and you have Callaway and you're behind, if he puts up 50 points, who cares? Doesn't matter. He's not going to, but you know what I mean? Making that point. Get away, be different, find yourself a different cheapy receiver, even his teammate, who could be perfectly fine. And he probably kind of sort of has a better matchup as well too, if those kind of things matter to you. Grant, your favorite cheapie as far as the receivers, we threw out the whole slew: the Moores, Elijah, Rondale, Callaway. Marshall looks the part, like he looks like an absolute stud from what we can see so far. The rookie Marvin Jones is just too cheap there in Jacksonville. Pittman seems to be too cheap as well. Do you have a favorite amongst that group?
I mean, probably when you consider ownership, probably more, but it's really not close. I don't really have a favorite. I mean, obviously Callaway is going to be super chalky, but it seems
which more was that? Not to cut you off. Which more was that?
Rondale.
Okay.
But I don't really have a favorite. I'm just being honest here. I'm going to be mixing and matching all of them. I'll probably have between 10 and 30% ownership in all of them. It's just kind of the way the builds are going out. I know that it's going to be a little bit chalky, but it just kind of rounds out a lot of things. I'm going to be different a little in other ways, but I mean, I guess the one guy that's going drastically under owned is going to be Marshall. So he could put a big outing. Don't know what this offense is going to look like with Darnold in there. And we don't know exactly how good he is, but it seems like every single week or every single year, week 1, there's always one big wide receiver output by a cheap guy that people weren't on.
We have a slew of questions coming in, so we got to pick up the pace. We're only on for the next 11 minutes. We yield. You guys should stick around, of course, because coming up after us is Beimfohr and Ben Gretch, yards per Gretch. They'll be taking you guys all the way up to crunch time. Crunch time is Carlucci, Tuttle, and Kristi. All right. Your favorite big spend as far as receivers, Andre, is a whole bunch, obviously, and a lot of it factors in, I presume, what's the rest of your lineup looks like. It's lineups, it's lines, it's not players. I've been told from Blender.
Just play them.
It's lineups. Everybody has a Blender impression, I think. Mine's pretty terrible. Andre, do you have a favorite as far as these receivers, as far as the big spends?
Yeah, well, there's a couple I like. I like Calvin really a lot today. So I'm definitely going to be double field on at least for sure. And I like getting DK Metcalf coming at low ownership. I'm definitely going to be well over the field on him. Him and Tyler Lockett, both of them are too low owned for me. Another two players that I like that I think that no one's really paying attention to is Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. So I like pairing them with Kirk Cousins today. I think they can have monster games, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kirk Cousins honestly threw like 4 touchdowns, they both caught 2 apiece. AJ Brown knows getting a lot of the ownership at 11%, which is fine, but I think that we should just I think that Julio Jones deserves more ownership than what he's getting. They both are, and AJ Brown I think was dealing more of the injuries in the preseason, and Julio was too, but Julio, we know he plays through his injuries. And one more guy, because then we got to hurry up and go. Terry McLaurin, 6% ownership, like. With Fitzpatrick there or Fitzmagic, he should be doubled. He should be doubled for sure because he's gonna. There's gonna be at least 2 or 3 bombs thrown throughout that whole game to him, and he's gonna be able to drop them in and probably catch like a 60, 70-yard touchdown. I wouldn't be surprised.
Grant, anything to add here as far as the big name receivers, or even worked right in the mid tier? We got a bunch of questions that people want us to answer some questions. I want to talk stacks as well. All right. How about your favorite stacks today, Grant?
I mean, Washington is probably my favorite stack. Philly, Seattle are probably like the best ones. And then just stacking up the Tennessee side of that Arizona game and bring it back with Hopkins or 2 cheaper guys.
Fitzpatrick, do you pair him with just McLaurin? Now the absence of Samuel, are we all of a sudden interested in the rookie Brown, the hump dog, Adam Humphries? They're both stone minimum. Like, if they appealing enough for you? Again, there's tons of salary out there. So, like, these guys actually have to perform too. It's not like you just want those 10 points and that's good enough necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I'll mix and match. Like, I like Logan Thomas, but just mixing and matching is probably the way to go.
Andre, your favorite stack, be it one team, be it a game stack? What do you have for me?
I have a couple different, but I really like I said, the Russell Wilson stack with Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf speaks to me a lot. Obviously, the Sam Darnold one as well. Him going with Robbie Anderson is my favorite. Even throwing in Marshall in there too. Moore is going to be my third option part of that. And then I also like Matt Ryan to round out my top 3 pretty much, and targeting him with Russell Gage and Calvin Ridley, and Kyle Pitts to the tight end.
You mentioned the Carolina stack. Who's your favorite run back on the Jets side? Is it Elijah Moore? Is it Corey Davis?
I'm getting a lot of Elijah Moore because he's 3K. I'm trying to limit that as much as I can, but I think his role is going to be significant in this offense. So in a PPR format like Draftkings, he's going to be higher on for me, and I can't avoid it. But on Fanduel, I like Corey Davis more.
I'll say defense, Yahoo specific. And we want to give a couple. We promised people some Yahoo specific plays. Both the Broncos and the 49ers have really, really strange prices. Of course, defense, highest variant. It's really the hardest one to predict. And, you're generally supposed to be under the field on the heavily owned defenses. But yeah, those guys are going to be heavily owned. Those defenses are too cheap on Yahoo. Grant, you have a defense stop by all means. Atlanta on DK at 2K really helps make everything work as well, too, if you want to go full star scrubs. Greg, give me a couple of Yahoo picks for the people and a couple of defensive thoughts.
Patriots, Seahawks, probably 2 under on defenses. Wentz can turn the ball over quite a bit. Currently have them both projected for low amounts. Yahoo plays, I mean, do I give them chalky ones or under the radar ones?
Just a couple you like. I don't know. Whatever you want to do.
Jarvis Landry is a bit too cheap over there. Doesn't expect to be too highly owned. Deebo Samuel and Ayuk is actually not a terrible place to go, pairing with Garoppolo over on Yahoo just because of the price tags, and you can pay up in a whole lot of other spots. Chase Edmonds, I think, is going to be drastically under-owned for what he is. Javonte Williams, $13. He makes things work over on Yahoo. Waddle and Gaskins, like honestly, the entire Miami offense is a decent play over on Yahoo. I don't like them on other sites, but on Yahoo, they're very solid price tags, and they're not going to garner a ton of ownership.
We have a bunch of good questions. I'm going to start with you, Andre. We're going to bounce back and forth, and we're kind of sort of in lightning round right away. And I know you said you liked Wentz. Tell me why, or why do you want to play Wentz?
Well, more so, I just want to play Wentz just because of the ownership. He's not going to get owned at all. And we're playing, and we're all talking about playing, well, at least people in the industry are talking about playing Pittman and playing Campbell. So you're gonna play Pittman and Campbell. What if they have big games? You don't have the quarterback to go with in the time of the GPP, and he could be in the GPP winning lineup. So to me, Wentz can get it done with his legs. He's done it in the past, and he can get it done throwing the ball too as well. So to me, he's worth a GPP shot, especially if you're running 150, and just seeing how it goes from there.
Grant Keelan wants to know, FanDuel tournament, give me the best defense to play for the 1 p.m. game only. Your options: San Fran, Minnesota, Chargers, or Washington.
Uh,
I think
Chargers.
It's San Fran. Oh, okay.
I mean, as much as I love Fitzmagic, there's always the chance that bad Fitzmagic comes out there and throws 3 picks. The guy likes to sling.
Yeah, it's also that 1 o'clock West Coast. It's 10 o'clock in the morning still for the Chargers.
I mean, I'm hoping for a early 2-pick 6 by Fitzmagic so he can go nuts.
The best thing for your quarterback to do, like honestly, is to throw a pick 6 in the very first play of the game. It really is. It really is amazing.
The entire first half, every time he throws a pick, just take it to the house. Come on, the points are already lost. Just take it to the house and get the ball back. He's gonna have to chuck more.
Okay, lightning round, self-imposed. We got to go. Andre, your GPP thoughts as far as the rookie Zach Wilson? Yeah or nay?
I limited him to my player last night. I tried to find reasons to get to him, but I can't play him today.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well too. I think the Jets are better suited as run backs and not starting with Wilson. Grant, can I double stack with Jalen Hurts, or is single stacking the better option?
You can do both. It's not what's the better option. I mean, the cheap, it's what the rest of your lineup build is, and now you bring it back on the other side with 2 Atlanta players.
I think you can run him naked too. I think he's one of the few quarterbacks, and I'm okay with that.
I would suggest not running it naked. He obviously can get 100 yards, but there's enough different pass catchers that you probably want someone in there.
Andre, Wilson did not make your player pool. Erik wants to know if Ben Roethlisberger is he in your tournament player pool?
Let me see, because I thought he was, but maybe he got eliminated.
Maybe a pinch.
Yeah, I think he got crossed off for me. Even though I love the Steelers today a lot. Just a win outright and to win a division this year. But no, he didn't make my player pool today. Just because I see the upside that he has, but I don't think in this matchup with the wind blowing, I don't think he's gonna be able to get it done today. I think the defense is gonna bring it home for them.
Grant, lightning round. I don't like this one. Miami, New England stack.
Not anywhere but super draft.
Let's see. FanDuel GPP, is it smart to fade Kyle Pitts in tournaments? Well, what are your thoughts there, Andre?
And GPPs, yeah, you can always fade them. It's not a necessary play that you need to have.
FanDuel cash, Grant, one of these two. I don't think I have either one in my cash lineup. Michael Pittman or Devontae Smith?
Smith.
Andre, how many quarterbacks are you using if you're running 150, how many quarterbacks are in the pool?
14.
There you go. Let's see. For tournaments, Grant, would you play Campbell over Pittman?
Probably not.
Who likes Williams? Does anybody like Williams, the running back?
Sorry, I was thinking that. Yes, I would.
Williams, the running back for Denver. Is that the question you're answering?
No, the Campbell.
Okay. Who does anybody want to give a sales pitch for the rookie running back for Denver? In theory, he's going to take over Gordon. I would imagine. Is it going to happen week 1? I don't know. Any thoughts as far as
he's cheaper
Williams?
on Yahoo? I like him on Yahoo.
Yeah, not for me, no.
And I think he's 2x on Super Draft.
Tristan's asking cash game favorite quarterback in DK. I'm good with one of the 4. I ended up with Hurts for the record. At least my first lineup. I'm gonna have more than one lineup, but I'm good with. I'm probably not gonna get them Mahomes, Murray, Allen, probably Allen or Hurts. Those are probably my 2 favorite as far as a cash game quarterback. Andre, could Hines be a good run back for a Seattle stack?
He can. He's going to get some work regardless, especially with that new contract being the highest paid non-starting running back. So he can be a good run back for sure, because that means you expect them to be down. So, yeah.
Grant, are you concerned with Eckler's hammy?
A little bit, not much though.
DK is playing 3 of the top 4 running backs in optimal cash game strategy. You can do that. I don't know if that's optimal because you can also play 4 receivers and like Devontae Adams and 3 of the cheapies. And I'm at a crossroads and I'm going to make more than one lineup, and I'm probably going to do both routes. And I don't know if one is definitively right or definitively wrong. Andre, how about a nice, safe Kansas City stack for single entry? Is that too chalky for you?
No, that's definitely not, because Kansas City's going to be, we know they'll be popular, but not too high on.
Grant, pick 2 of these running backs for cash. Kamara, Jones, Sanders, or Robinson?
Kamara.
All right, we got to step aside and get out of here and make way. We do appreciate you guys watching the show. Thank you for asking questions. Making it interactive is more fun. Do subscribe, do turn on notifications, and don't go anywhere, because following us, they're going to be really doing a deep dive as far as a tournament perspective, just giving you all sorts of angles that you probably haven't thought about. It's Erik Beimfohr, it's Ben Gretch, yards per Gretch. After that is Crunch Time, Carlucci, Tuttle, and Kristi. Give me a hot take, Grant. Give me a hot take. Andre had one on layaway. Grant, what's happening? What's going on?
Magic takes on Millie Maker.
Andre, see it and raise it.
Jesus, I didn't have one ready, but I'm just gonna say Russell Wilson, with Tyler Lockett takes out a Millie.
Love it. Hey, kids.
Same thing with Metcalf. That was Andre. That was Grant. I was Dean. This is football. Enjoy your football. Stay tuned. We're out of here. Hold.
What's going on, grinders, and welcome to the Prize Picks Room. You are in with the Chief. First week of NFL. We got a promo with Prize Picks. Going to kick it right off with Patrick Mahomes over a half a yard passing. And when it comes to Patrick Mahomes, I'm not giving you analysis on this, people. It's a half a yard. It's a promo. The max order is $25 a day. Make sure you pair that with your next best prop. Get that thing in. That's pretty much free money. Thank you, Prize Picks. Next up on the list is going to be James Robinson in Jacksonville over 68.5 rushing yards. Now, when it comes to James Robinson, one of the things that I looked at was Houston last season, giving up 160.2 yards on the ground. I don't think this team has just changed much. In fact, it may have gotten worse. I think it's a slam dunk spot for James Robinson, where Travis Etienne has had a season-ending injury, which is going to open it up for him. I think he goes into the 100-yard stratosphere here. I think he gets 20 touches. Really like James Robinson over 68.5 fantasy points. Last but not least, we're going to head on down to Carolina, my beloved Carolina Panthers. We're going to take Sam Darnold over 249.5 passing yards. So when it comes to Sam Darnold, this is a new team, new system, new environment, more weapons, Christian McCaffrey, Terrace Marshall, you name it. Did I forget about his good friend Robbie Anderson? The Jets last season gave up 275.6 yards per game. I think Sam Darnold goes over this number easily in a petty Betty matchup with his former New York Jets. That's going to wrap it up this week in the Prize Picks Room. Make sure to get on over to Prize Picks. Sign up. We'll see you next week. What's going on?
We're here back in the Fantasy Bar. The NFL season is back, and I am here once again with 6 of my favorite plays on Fanduel and Draftkings, including a cheap quarterback wide receiver pairing, some of my favorite correlation plays on the slate, and of course, my favorite play of the night. Who do you got to pay up for this week? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 1 is here. 6 of my favorite plays fresh off the tap for you. This is Beer's Daily Fantasy 6-Pack. Thank you, as always, for stopping by and checking out the video. If you're an old timer, you know what we do. 6 picks each and every week on FanDuel and DraftKings for the NFL season. If you are new, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. Sit back, grab that cold one, and listen as I give you 6 of my favorite plays. Now, before we get into things, first thing, make sure you click that thumbs up button on YouTube, guys. Very important. These videos are free. That is the tip jar here in the Fantasy Bar. A way to say thank you here, and I greatly appreciate it. Secondly, make sure you subscribe to the channel, get notified when these videos are coming out. And lastly, make sure you guys head over to scoresandodds.com/beer for all of your sports betting needs, premium picks from some of your favorite personalities. I will be giving you some of my favorite premium picks in the NFL as well this season, but not just NFL picks in every single sport under one umbrella. Tons of analytics, compare odds across different sports books. Go and check it out today. Weekly, monthly, yearly subscriptions available at scoresandodds.com/beer. All right, let's get into week 1. Looks like a fun main slate, a ton of games, and we've narrowed things down to 6 of my favorite plays. Let's start at the running back position with James Robinson of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ownership-wise, I don't think you're going to get a lot of ownership here on James Robinson. Got a lot of high-end running backs. You got concerns in his own backfield. How is Carlos Hyde going to be used here? Urban Meyer's boy. How is Duke Johnson going to acclimate into this offense? Is he going to be the pass-catching back here? We talked to Urban Meyer. People concerned about how well he's going to be able to coach this team. All in all, I think what it's going to do is lower James Robinson's ownership to a point we feel really good about it in tournaments and even cash games. You talk about a floor, and I realize played almost all the snaps, got almost all the touches last season, and that was part of the reason. But this guy gave us double-digit DraftKings points in every single game last season, so very, very consistent. Also had some outings where he showed us his ceiling at 30 or more DraftKings points. And the matchup, like we mentioned, no team in the NFL allowed more DraftKings points or rushing yards than this Houston Texans team. They're going to be bad. James Robinson going to take advantage here. Love the Jaguars this week and love James Robinson on both FanDuel and DraftKings. All right, I promised you a quarterback on the cheap. We're going to go to Carolina and roll with Sam Darnold. So you talk about stacking partners here. Well, pick your poison here with Sam Darnold. You got DJ Moore. Check. You got Robbie Anderson. Check. You got Terrace Marshall. The rookies look great in the preseason. Check. You've also got the best running back in the game and the best pass catching running back in the game, arguably in Christian McCaffrey. So a lot of different ways that you can go here with Sam Darnold. We look at the Jets, fantastic matchup here. And I know new coaching staff, all that, things will change, but just based on last season, we're talking about Tino's bottom 5 in passing yards, touchdowns, and fantasy points allowed to the quarterback positions. Now, they made some changes. I don't see significant enough changes where this defense is suddenly going to be outstanding against the pass. Carolina, nice home favorites here. And the old revenge narrative. You guys know I love me some narratives here. Sam Darnold playing against his former team here. That's the cherry on top here. I love the matchup. I love the price here. Sam Darnold, one of my favorite value quarterbacks on the week, especially over on DraftKings at just 5,000. Now, we mentioned we like Sam Darnold. We mentioned all those receivers. Who do we pair him up with? For me, it's his old teammate, Robbie Anderson. We're going with him as our wide receiver here against the New York Jets. So Robbie Anderson, fantastic last season. Now he gets his quarterback back here in Sam Darnold. Was a target monster last season in this offense. And I know we get McCaffrey back. We get Terrace Marshall. I still think Robbie Anderson going to be a focus of this offense. But 7 or more targets in 12 of his 16 games last season. Had a massive season in 2020. I think the sky's the limit here in 2021. In fact, I like this game so much, I think you can stack this game a lot of different ways. We talked about the Carolina side with Sam Darnold, with all the ways you can stack him on the Jets. Really like Corey Davis, Elijah Moore as run it back options. I think this game goes over the total. Love the stack here. Love Robbie Anderson in all formats here this week against his former team. All right, let's stay at the wide receiver position. Next play for you, another value play with Michael Pittman Jr. of the Colts. So this is one of those pricing plays. The sites price things early in week 1. Michael Pittman not priced as the wide receiver 1. Well, a lot has changed here in this Colts offense, specifically T.Y. Hilton going down with injury. So you're getting a wide receiver 1 at very, very wide receiver 2/3 prices here. Hell, DraftKings, you're getting him as a wide receiver 4 basically at 4,100. So you add all that up, you add the price, you add T.Y. Hilton, and you add the Seattle offense who's going to put up points. That's going to force Indianapolis to the air. There's a lot of things in the factor here of Michael Pittman, the reason why to get him in those lineups here in week 1. Not only that, but the matchup. Seattle, second most receiving yards allowed and the most receptions allowed to the wide receiver position. I think you really see a breakout here out of Michael Pittman, and it starts here in week 1 against the Seattle Seahawks. All right, moving right along, got to get you a tight end. We're going to go to Value Town here with Robert Tonyan of the Packers. Now, I love Travis Kelce. I love George Kittle, but if you can't find a way to get up to those guys, I think Tonyan, a nice option for you and a way to pivot off of some of the excitement and the energy and the ownership that's going to be with Kyle Pitts. So I like Kyle Pitts as much as the next guy, but Tonyan, a fantastic option here against the Saints. I'm really expecting him to take a leap here this season. We saw the touchdowns. They're big time for Tonyan and Aaron Rodgers last season. I don't think that changes a ton here with Tonyan. We know Rodgers probably going to come crashing down a little bit, but the Packers expected to score some points here. In fact, only 2 teams have a higher projected team total on this slate, and the Saints have struggled a little bit with tight ends. Bottom 10 in touchdowns allowed last season. We know that's the name of the game here with Robert Tonyan. Nice value here, especially on
What is going on, RotoGrinders family? Welcome to the very first Week 1 Lineup HQ GPP Final Takes. It's here. The season is here. I am your co-host, Erik Beimfohr. You can find me on Twitter at Erik Beimfohr, and I'm pumped to be joined by Ben Gretch at Yards for Gretch on Twitter. We'll be here with you every Sunday morning leading up to lock to kind of go over some final, just thoughts on the slate, specific plays, some different ways to maybe attack the slate from a GPP perspective, game theory perspective. But Ben, how's we're getting close. How are you excited for Week 1? How you feeling?
I'm stoked. Obviously, it is fun. Looking at Week 1, there's so many ways it could go. I was still drafting, high stake stuff as of 11:30 Eastern last night. So DFS has been still slightly secondary to me, but I definitely built some lineups on Friday and Saturday before all that. And then we're also obviously every weekend to react to inactives. And I just saw a confirmation about something we were talking about before the show. Zach Moss is inactive, somewhat surprisingly. So that there's our first kind of big inactive of the year. I think that makes Devin Singletary kind of interesting, but we got a lot of stuff to talk about.
That's fascinating. So that's actually a perfect, I think, lead into this slate because, everybody that's even, if you even pulled up just the slate this morning, particularly on Draftkings, but even a little bit more so on the other sites, just with the, the dynamics of Week 1 where the slate comes out, so far in advance and just kind of how they price, rookies and some players that.
So Trey Sermon's inactive.
Okay. Welcome to Week 1. We're 2 minutes into the show and it's bombshell season going on. Okay.
Didn't expect that.
Well, that does make me feel fairly quite good about Raheem Mostert, and Devin Singletary. So it'll be really interesting. Okay, level setting. Just going back and finishing my point.
Yeah.
All week everybody has been talking about what we have, like especially at wide receiver and especially on DraftKings, which is kind of the crux of the conversation here. We'll be a little bit focused on DraftKings. We'll try to touch on the other sites when applicable. But on DraftKings, you have just an absurd number of cheap wide receivers, literally a bunch of viable players. Like you said, if you've been drafting season long or, best ball or anything like that, these guys are like anywhere from like 7th to 10th round picks, like really valuable players at the stone minimum on DraftKings, 3,000, or even Marquez Callaway, at 3,400. If you like Marvin Jones is 3,600. The list goes on and on. There's a ton of guys down there. And so, that's kind of the theme of the slate, right? That then allows you to get up at whatever other position you want. Quarterback, running back, you can get the elite guys. And so I think the thing that's been just sticking out to me all week, really, when I've been tinkering around is not to avoid necessarily that range of wide receiver, but you just need to be smart about how you're using those guys. I don't want to be just using a bunch of Rondale Moore one-offs, a bunch of Elijah Moore one-offs. I want to be doing, we kind of talked before the show, using those guys smartly in lineups, correlating them, right? When I'm playing Terrace Marshall, maybe I'm using a jet on the other side. When I'm playing Rondale Moore, maybe I'm using Derrick Henry or AJ Brown or Julio Jones or something, or, including them in game stacks, being smart about how you use those guys. But also the big thing that keeps sticking out to me, and now it's even more interesting with this late news of Zach Moss and Trey Sermon being inactive, is kind of the, flipping the build. Basically, we have all these elite wide receivers and tons of them in amazing spots, and the whole field is jumping to these cheap wide receivers. And so we can just use, especially now, they're even more viable, right? Raheem Mostert, Devin Singletary, Javonte Williams is cheap, etc. There's some cheap backs, even in like the 6K range. Joe Mixon has been the hype. He's going to play every snap, for all the offseason and play the passing game finally. And he's just like 6K. Same thing for Najee Harris. So how are you thinking about kind of the slate dynamics with the wide receiver running back pricing tiers?
Yeah, I think it's so easy to jam in McCaffrey, Kamara, Cook, whatever you want to do at the top of running back and play the cheap wide receivers. And I think you put it really well. Every one of the lineups that I've built for tournaments has done not that. I do have like one lineup that has a couple of those top running backs, and then I did like a Zach Wilson stack with Tyler Kroft.
Oh yeah,
we'll get into the gross stuff later, but that's one where I did sort of the Jets Carolina game as being exciting. But it's not just the players, to your point. I mean, we don't even know what offenses will come out and look a little bit different, maybe look a little bit more exciting. We talked on our earlier preview show for kind of looking into the early weeks of the season and for week one earlier this week about how there's some teams that we think could, potentially change up their trend. So remember last year, the Bills, it came out of pretty much nowhere. Like there was reason to be excited about guys like Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen in seasonal, but no one thought they would come out and throw on early downs at the rate they did and suddenly just be a completely different offense. It was pretty exciting. Look at what we saw on Thursday. I mean, the Bucs and the Cowboys were teams that we thought could do that, but they were so extreme in that matchup that the running backs basically didn't have value. I mean, that was you wanted to be in the passing side of those games. And so from a team perspective, from a game perspective, we don't even know which games like we want to make sure to have a little, a piece of or parts of. So every time I'm building lineups, I'm thinking, okay, I'm saying, these 3 games are going to be the ones that shoot out in week 1. Here's how I want to build smartly. Look at these different games, make little mini correlations, not a lot of one-offs, occasional ones, because it's tough. I mean, with pricing too, there's so many good plays. I think that can be helpful, but really trying to be smart with my construction was sort of my biggest goal for week 1.
Yeah, I think, it's so easy, like you said, with so many plays, and even more now opening up that maybe weren't as good of as strong of plays with some of the inactives. It's really easy to kind of fall into the trap of, I like this guy, I like that guy. I want to jam whoever your favorite player is, right? I want to jam Antonio Gibson. I want to jam Stephon Diggs. But you could tell yourself a story on, just a countless number of players. And even if you're playing like 150 teams, you can't cover every single base. And so that's definitely like the big theme for me is, you're going to have to take stands and you don't have to get crazy. Sometimes I think people struggle with both kind of ends of the barbell of playing GPPs, taking it kind of too chalky, right? And thinking like, oh, I can just play this one guy that makes me unique, right? That's people talk about being unique. That's not really necessarily the greatest approach, because you're trying to create a path for you to get to first place in these tournaments. And then on the opposite end, people say, well, I'm just going to fade every single, this guy's 10 or 15% or higher. I'm not playing any of those guys. And particularly this week with so many plays available, that if you're doing what you said, you're doing, building smart lineups and correlating and all of that, like, if you have the money for Kamara or McCaffrey and they make sense on that team, you don't have to avoid them just because, they're chalky. So we got some more inactives coming, and Keelan Cole is also inactive, which maybe doesn't sound like a big deal, but I actually did want to touch on him because Jamison Crowder is out and now Keelan Cole is also out, which, sets up really well for both Corey Davis and Elijah Moore. And maybe even your gross play that I'm really, really high on today, Tyler Kroft. But I'm really excited about that game, and so that's one game I'm targeting pretty heavily personally.
I love to hear you say that you're really high on it.
Oh yeah, so I don't want to keep being the guy talking about Darnold, but I think that the Panthers can be an offense that can exceed expectations, whether or not even Darnold is necessarily good. And I think the Jets are an interesting offense as well. And now we get a little bit more kind of, condensed target tree. I think that's a really, really interesting game for GPPs. And, around it, you can do absolutely whatever you want. If you're playing any combination of Darnold, Wilson, Elijah will get some ownership, but like DJ Moore and Robbie aren't going to be owned. Tyler Kroft is certainly not going to be owned. And so, if you want to play Kamara or Dalvin or Diggs or guys like that are going to carry some ownership, that's a good way to do it. I feel like that game is.
Yeah, and Kroft, I'll just note that if you're buying in at all, and look, they cut all their tight ends in preseason and traded Chris Herndon. They did bring back Ryan Griffin. Everything that I've seen and dug into has suggested that Griffin is expected to be like the clear number 2, but that could totally bomb out. Griffin could play half the snaps along with Kroft. We don't really know. But Kroft scored twice in the preseason, once on like a vertical route and a stand-up kind of spread formation. They used him as sort of like the Mike Gesicki type. And then another time on one of those San Francisco design plays where he was running, in the flat right by the line of scrimmage, and they got Zach Wilson a little rollout, easy pass, and Kroft did it after the catch. Kroft, not like a great athlete at all. He's basically just a guy. but that design is important because the coaching staff came over from San Francisco. You get some of those Kittle elements. What I would say is if you do like Croft at all, this is absolutely the week to play him. The Panthers took the first defensive player in the NFL draft this year, J.C. Horn, a cornerback out of South Carolina. Looked pretty good at man coverage in preseason in my eye. They already had Dante Jackson as a pretty solid other corner last year. The strength of their team is at the corners or their defense, at the corners and at the defensive line. They have a really good pass rush. They've built out their defensive line well. And so, you have Zach Wilson, rookie, first game starter. You have this offense that's going to incorporate some of these kind of designed tight end short passes and things sometimes. We already saw it with Croft in the preseason. We've definitely seen it back in San Francisco. I mean, it would not surprise me if Croft caught 6-8 passes because they want to get Wilson some easy completions. That would be the way to attack Carolina's defense. That's where they are weakest. It's the linebackers and the safeties. And so this matchup, look, I don't want to go too heavy on Tyler Croft, but it's a pretty fun one to consider.
Well, I'm going too heavy on Tyler Croft. So it also is kind of a point about this slate, right? I mean, elephant in the room, we kind of, talking about tight ends. Kyle Pitts on DraftKings is 4,400 and then also a great matchup. And I'm even more bullish maybe than the market even is on Kyle Pitts. And he's just going to be wildly popular on DraftKings. Maybe not quite as much so on FanDuel. It's a little bit closer pricing, but it's not easy to find pivots away from Kyle Pitts, especially if you're trying to save any sort of money at all. So I think, whether you like Tyler Croft or not, I think the tight end decision point is very significant on DraftKings, because I mean, we all know, how talented Kyle Pitts is, but there is also still that week one rookie uncertainty, right? And I expect he's going to have a fine game almost no matter what, but if you can find that sub 5% tight end that is the league winner, I think that's one of the ways to create the cleanest path to first place to me is the tight end position, because there's just not a lot to choose from. Whereas we're talking about these other positions, right? Well, again, whether you like Singletary or Mostert, you prefer just jamming the studs, or maybe you like the mix-ins, whatever. There's tons of options. But at tight end, there really isn't. So that's why talking about a guy like Tyler Croft, I think, is important, because it's hard to kind of find any leverage at tight end at all today.
Yeah, and Pitts is obviously a tough one to fade. I know a lot of people are talking about the price on DK, especially. Maybe he's just going to be clearly, $1,000, $2,000 underpriced, and that's going to be clear from week one. And this was that looks like an exciting game. Atlanta Philly is definitely a game I have some stacks of, and so I wouldn't say full fade Pitts or anything, but where with the ownership he's going to carry, and then basically the way ownership's breaking out is the other top tight ends. Like, people are paying down for Pitts, or they're paying up for the other top tight ends because there's so much salary flexibility. There's no reason to go down to a 2.5 K tight end, and so I think that's all the more reason to sit there
to do it.
Tyler Croft. So one of the other interesting things with the whole kind of flipping the build is the running back position. The top guys are easy to fit in with a lot of the cheap value. Where are we at? I think Mostert's a really nice play now. Singletary maybe less so. The Bills might just come out and throw a ton, which Diggs is massively underpriced. I think that's just going to help his ownership. If you have Moss out, I think it's got to help Josh Allen's projection. Then another place I was looking at running back in those cheaper ranges was Edmonds. And even if you want to get a little bit crazier, we don't know for sure that Edmonds is going to be the clear lead. I think James Conner at a cheap price is also in play as sort of a leverage playoff, what should be a really exciting game. And I think you want to be stacking Arizona, Tennessee as well. What do you think about those options?
Yeah. In terms of flipping the build, I'm a lot more excited, even more excited about it now. I was actually kind of on Mostert before, so now it's a little bit upsetting that people are going to play. Definitely gravitate. I'll definitely be curious. As we're talking, I'm going to think a little bit about kind of what maybe we think the ownership is going to do on someone like Mostert, because people at times love to overreact. Like, Mostert still isn't going to go get 25 carries today, right? Like, that's just not how they use Raheem Mostert. However, if there is any sort of, ceiling now to his touch levels in this matchup, in this offense, I mean, it's total wheels up. So I'm going to kind of nibble on as we continue to talk about Sermon and Singletary. That's kind of my take. I think it can go both ways, right? Like, Singletary can play, as we saw last year, could play basically every snap. And now you just need a little bit of the touchdown luck that their running backs did not get last year, which, who's to say that I think you've been the one pushing it. What, their running back scored 7 touchdowns or something last year out of what 50 something. Yeah. So I mean, expecting that to continue, I think is just silly. However, I think what they've also proven is they're willing to just literally never run. And that can actually be okay for Singletary, right? If he's catching passes on DraftKings, that's actually awesome, right? If he catches 6 or 7 balls, maybe lucks into a touchdown, that's awesome for his price. But what it really makes me think is like, Josh Allen and Diggs are not going to be low owned, but I don't think that people are maybe going to react to what this could do to their ceiling and the ancillary guys, right? Nobody is playing Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Gabriel Davis, right? Because you're playing these other cheap guys. And I think, if they throw 50 plus times, like, yeah, Diggs is probably going to smash, but someone else is too. In that passing offense.
Yeah, that I don't like the old guys, and even I am sitting here going, it feels like there's no way that one of Emmanuel Sanders or Cole Beasley doesn't wind up being kind of a smash here, unless Gabriel Davis is the smash. Well, it feels like there's no way an ancillary Buffalo receiver with the Moss inactive basically locks that in. One of these dudes is going to be a low-owned, cheap, strong play.
Yeah,
and I love Diggs. I think Diggs could just go for 200 yards as well, but like they're going to throw every play.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's my biggest takeaway from the Singletary thing. It's not that you can't play him by any means. I'm going to tinker around when we're done here and see if there's anything that makes sense using Singletary. But the biggest takeaway for me is just, I mean, I already love Josh Allen and Diggs in that passing game, but now I think it's just even better in terms of what we can expect from. And I already expected them to throw basically every snap, but now it's just like you said, it kind of.
I will also note
even more.
It makes me a little bit more concerned about Najee Harris for week 1. I think his price is a little bit down. He was sort of interesting. I had some people asking me about him in cash. My concern for him was that Buffalo comes out throwing, takes an early lead, and as much as Pittsburgh has talked about wanting to run, they do wind up a little more pass heavy in this matchup than they will for the full season because they have to chase points a little bit. It would make sense in this Buffalo matchup. You would go right back to the Thursday night game where Zeke basically didn't get he played a ton of snaps. Everyone's talked about that. I don't think Zeke's not going to score any points this year, but that wasn't going to be the situation for him to succeed. The slight difference, obviously, is he was running against a really tough run D. Najee gets Buffalo, who is going to ask you to run against them a little bit more, but their run D's improved. You could see a scenario where Pittsburgh winds up throwing way more than they want to. Najee probably catches some passes, but isn't necessarily a great play in a game that's sort of a shootout, and neither is Singletary on the other side. And we wind up with a similar game to Thursday with a lot of passing on both sides. I mean, think back to those lines. Mike Evans was the only receiver that stayed healthy that didn't have a smash. You had CeeDee Lamb, you had Amari, you had Godwin, you had Antonio Brown, you even had Gronk going off. Everyone in the passing game on both sides did very well. If Buffalo is making Zach Moss, it sounds like a healthy inactive from the additional stuff I'm seeing.
Wow.
They're kind of indicating that they are going to do what we think that they, we already pretty much thought they were going to do, but very extreme. And that's going to put pressure on Pitt. That is the more efficient way of playing. That is like, that's going to work for them. I mean, I know Pittsburgh has a good defense, but they're going to put up points doing that. They're going to force Pittsburgh into a little bit more of a shootout than they might want to. And so, this will be a really interesting game.
And from Zartan in the chat calling it like a sneaky shootout. I think what's most fascinating about this game, and I was already interested in it, but two parts is if what you're saying, happens and Buffalo basically forces the Steelers to be a little bit more pass heavy than they want to be, particularly on DraftKings, you don't even need a true massive shootout, right? Like it could be 28-24, but if both teams are throwing like we saw on Thursday, right? Thursday was pretty much a shootout, but it's not like it wasn't like what Rams Chiefs or whatever it was where there's 90 points. It wasn't like that. It's just when wide receivers are getting 20 targets, like guys are just going to score so many PPR points. And on the Pittsburgh side, what's the most interesting is nobody's playing any of those dudes. So even when people are playing Josh Allen and or Diggs or, targeting that game, like nobody wants to choose between Claypool, Deontay, and Juju, right? Nobody, I don't feel comfortable trying to make that decision either, but that's the point is Like someone has to do something, and multiple people, like you said, you could have touched a $3 wide receivers smashed. And on the Cowboy side, Gallup was on his way to smashing too. We were going to get like eight ceiling games out of pass catchers. So like, it's almost like it doesn't matter which guy you pick, you know?
And it might not be that extreme. Pittsburgh might be, kind of unwillingly forced to pass. But to be clear, the point I'm making is that Buffalo, well, if they come out passing, I expect them to score, and then they're going to force Pittsburgh in terms of script to come back. I totally agree with you on the Steelers. They were on my list as one I wanted to highlight on the show today, that I'm seeing really low ownership on all three. It is very difficult to pick. But I was already thinking that we might get this sort of game script where Buffalo comes out throwing heavy and forces Pittsburgh along a little bit. The Zach Moss inactive only pushes me further down that line of thinking. I mean, if you want to figure out who to pick, I think obviously Deontay Johnson is going to be the highest target projection. Hasn't always been super efficient, but I think you can certainly play him. Claypool's probably the biggest like blow up if you just want like one bring back. And then in some respects, I think everyone's going to think those two things. And I do think Juju has always been a little overlooked and undervalued all draft season. And so he might be the very low owned play if you're in a large field tournament to go Allen, Diggs, Juju, and expect him to catch 12 balls.
Yeah. And which he can, I know they talked about moving him outside a little bit more, and he keeps talking about how they're moving him outside a little bit more, but he is going to play the majority of the slot snaps, which is, say whatever you want about football and all that kind of stuff, just in terms of racking up catches, guys playing the slot can just have those 15 target games. There is a good question Tyler has in the chat that I don't even know if I have a great answer yet. So I'm trying to think through it as I'm stalling for time here, but he says DK Cash with the surprising news of Sermon inactive and Mike Davis the only option and in Atlanta. And honestly, he just names two guys, but there's other guys, right? Mixon, you just brought up Najee, we have Singletary. There's cheap backs that you can absolutely play. But in cash, do you prefer fading one of CMC, Dalvin, Kamara to maybe get up to Diggs or something like that, which I think will be a pretty darn contrarian way to play cash, but I don't even think that that's necessarily wrong when everybody's going to be on the exact same thing in cash. A little 2v2 to get Diggs and use one of these running backs, I think is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think it is too. I actually, full disclosure, don't have a cash lineup this week. I'm just playing all tournaments. I typically don't play very much cash. I enjoy playing tournaments a lot more, but especially this week, I think it's just like, it's a challenge, but there are a lot of decisions you can make. That is a conversation I had with a couple different people who are playing cash lineups, and I thought it was a very interesting way to approach it. If it were me, Cook is the one that I would pull out of those running backs. I think Kamara is going to be basically New Orleans' whole offense. They could stink, but even if they stink, he's going to catch a ton of passes. That Minnesota at Cincinnati game, I do like, and we were talking, I think before the show, but I haven't talked yet on the show, that Justin Jefferson is like such a clear ownership play because he's priced up over Diggs. People don't want to go all the way up to that when there are other great options. And yet Justin Jefferson at 7.7K at Cincinnati, who's a pace up team, is a play you would make any other week of the year. But for some reason in week one, we know the reason. There's so much value out there. It doesn't make a lot of sense to try to jam him in. So then jam him in and do it smartly with T. Higgins, who's one of the best values on the entire slate and will be, reasonably owned. Do a little mini correlation with Jefferson and Higgins. And that's how I've been playing that. I've been fading Cook a little bit. I'll probably be wrong. I mean, Cincinnati's just a bad run D and Cook's going to get a ton of work. But the idea is essentially that, that game becomes a little bit pass heavy too. And they, in same sort of concept that Cincinnati comes out throwing so much, they bring Minnesota along a little bit, and Dalvin doesn't actually run as much as, he's going to have points, but to pay off his high price, he's the one that I would move away from.
Yeah. And I think that game's also extremely fascinating for tournaments because, like you said, it's the same, basically the same dynamic, right? One team we know wants to play faster and wants to throw and use all their weapons, and Chase and Higgins and Boyd and even Mixon. And then you have, and with a bad defense. And then you have the Minnesota side that wants to run the ball and wants to play slow and all that. But we saw how many times last year, because and their defense will be improved. I mean, it can't get worse than what it was last year, but their defense will be improved. But this isn't the Bucs defense or anything like that. I'm not scared of the Vikings. So if they do happen to, fall behind or something, they even ceiling lifter is that they got like 2 dudes to throw to, like even Irv Smith is gone now. And somebody in chat actually brought up that I do think is interesting. If say you're stacking this game, or if you just want to play, T Higgins, maybe you don't even want to play Jefferson, like Tyler Conklin is not an unreasonable tight end punt as well. Again, doesn't feel comfortable. I get it when Kyle Pitts is available for 4,400, and Josh Kelly also inactive. Man, these inactives are wild today. Coming in, Anthony Miller also.
Well, we did get that report this morning that Eckler's basically a full go. It sounds like the hamstring thing was absolutely nothing. So
it is interesting that we've been curious about kind of who the backup to Eckler was going to be, or who was going to mix in to him. So I do think that is interesting. I
think clearly at this point probably Justin Jackson. He's been leaning that way. Yeah, I'm actually not super surprised about the Kelly inactive, a little bit, but especially with the positive news on Eckler this morning, I think we're going to get a lot of Eckler and then Justin Jackson to spell him. That's another game that I want to mention though, because I think Keenan Allen is like, of all these sort of like one-off takes I have, the Justin Jefferson, the Pittsburgh receivers, Tyler Kroft, whoever, I threw James Conner out there. I have this little list of guys that are like kind of interesting. Keenan Allen is the one that it's crazy. He's very low owned, right? They go into this season. The Chargers are a really interesting team. A lot of upside. I like Justin Herbert, but they kind of screwed him a little bit. If Keenan Allen isn't the guy who just gets like 20 targets, like they didn't really improve the wide receivers that much. You can talk about Josh Palmer, was not a big producer in college. I think there's a huge opportunity for Palmer. I could be wrong on him. He's not the type of rookie that I target right away in the early part of his season and really at all. I mean, I think he was a fine pick, like really late in best balls and things like that, but because opportunity is there for him, but he's not probably going to be a target dominator. Mike Williams has never graded well in like targets per route run. He's not a good separator. He's somebody, Herbert had some quotes this offseason where he basically has to remember to throw to a guarded Mike Williams, to tell himself to throw to Williams. There's no one else on that team that can draw targets except Eckler now, but Eckler's been a little banged up. They lost Hunter Henry as well. I think there's a little bit of a downgrade at tight end. They might incorporate Donald Parham, but Jared Cook, certainly I think a downgrade from Hunter Henry. And you get back to Keenan Allen, who's always been a massive target dominator. I mean, this is a guy that just, when I used to do projections for the Chargers years ago, I would project Keenan Allen's rate first and then everyone else. Like no one else matters. This is like a top 3 target dominator. He's a Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs now in Buffalo type target dominator where I'm projecting him first. And I'm not saying anyone else is affecting him. He's going to get his. And that, because he's that type of route runner, guys can't guard him. If something were to happen to Allen, that's where I'm like, low-key, Herbert's not going to have a lot of people to throw to. I actually thought Tyron Johnson was their most interesting ancillary receiver. They cut him. But basically, their number 3 receiver is either going to be Josh Palmer or Jalen Guyton, who had like the lowest targets per out run of any wide receiver last year. He's just like a wind sprinter. And so you're looking at Keenan Allen potentially having like a 40% target share in week 1. I understand Washington has a strong defense, but the Chargers are going to have to throw probably a little bit in this game on the road against a pretty decent Washington team. I think Antonio Gibson is priced down, is going to be a little bit popular. That's a little correlation I like. Gibson, Allen. I think Allen is it would not surprise me if he caught 15 passes. And if you're on DK, like that's going to be a huge smash at his price and low.
That's a really interesting one. And it actually covers two points here. D is asking like, how should I approach GPP, like large field GPPs on Fanduel today? And that's a vague question. And I'm not saying like, just you have to play Keenan Allen, but he's the perfect example of a guy that actually, like, because of everything that Ben just said, has like immense upside. And on Fanduel especially, there's so much more variance because it's all touchdowns, right? Being half point PPR, Keenan Allen catching, so I'm not even trying to make a case against him now, but like him catching 15 balls may not even necessarily get him there because he needs to get in the end zone. But a guy like him that no one is going to play on especially on FanDuel, absolutely no one is going to play because it perceived bad matchup, whatever. Those kinds of guys on FanDuel, like if he catches 12 balls and scores 2 touchdowns at 2% ownership or whatever on FanDuel, like that's your path to first place. And then, like you said, then you play Antonio Gibson and maybe he is the ceiling, the ceiling guy at running back. And now you don't have to get much more right. You don't even have to stack that game. So little things like that, where in the large field tournaments, especially on FanDuel, with it being so touchdown dependent, like I'm willing to take those shots on those guys because it's even higher variance when everything is touchdown related. Like we can project volume, especially on a PPR site with the pricing of DraftKings far better than we can guess. Like guys can I mean, CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper were awesome, but on PPR, look at what Amari did against CeeDee comparatively points wise on a PPR site versus a non PPR site. It was far closer. If Amari doesn't catch that second touchdown, he didn't even distance himself that much from CeeDee. So the touchdowns drive everything on FanDuel, which in turn ups the variance. So that's kind of how I would approach the large field stuff on FanDuel. And then the other thing, I was just looking as you're saying this, because I'm grinding the player props and stuff like that out here. Those are my favorite things to bet, even more so than sides. And Keenan Allen's reception prop is 5.5, and that is lower than all the other elite guys. Like, Diggs is like 7.5, Devontae is like 8.5, so he's way lower than all these other elite guys. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, as you're talking about it, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. So if you're going and betting any player props, go to BetMGM, use promo code GRINDERSBET, and you'll get $10. And you bet $10, excuse me for fumbling it, and you'll get $200 right away. Go to BetMGM, GRINDERSBET as the promo code, and just place a $10 bet on Keenan Allen over 5.5 catches. Invoice Ben if it doesn't hit, but you're still going to get $200 free. So that's a really fascinating one. But he's a great example of like tournament plays that are actually just like legitimately good plays. Like you can tell that story that you just did on week 1, but absolutely no one's going to play him. It's harder to find those guys as the year goes on. So we talked a little bit about, Justin Jefferson, the guy. I got to stop talking about the Panthers, but a similar player to some of these guys that we talked about that I think can explode is DJ Moore, and is also going to go lost in that middle tier. I love a lot of those guys today.
I might be the world's biggest DJ Moore fan, and he's lost for me. I have not found him onto a lot of teams. Like I believe in that dude's upside more than maybe anyone. I don't know. I talk about this guy constantly. I got a lot of feedback last year when he wasn't blowing up, and I just went right back to the well this year and have been continuing to hammer that DJ Moore's going to explode at some point, and I really do think it's going to happen. And even I have not got him in a lot of lineups, so that really drives home your point. As soon as you brought that up, I was like, crap, I forgot to get more DJ Moore. I guess I'm very exposed in season long, so at least I have that going.
Yeah. I think, but he's the perfect example for me of a guy that, and maybe other people aren't as bullish as we are on either DJ Moore or the Panthers or Darnold or whatever, and I get that. But like, okay, so we have Christian McCaffrey as chalk, and we have these cheap wide receivers as chalk. And then you have, like you include the Tyler Kroft thing, right? You have these leverage points, and DJ Moore is just this perfect leverage point. Even when people fade some of the cheap wide receivers, they're going to go get Diggs, hit Tyreek, Devontae, right? They're going to go get those guys. And trust me, I'm going to get those guys too. But there's this middle tier of guys that's just absolutely lost in tournaments today. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, the Titans guys, Julio Jones, AJ Brown, if you just get in this, 6K range, maybe 7K range, like those guys are completely lost because it's so easy to build stars and scrubs.
AJ Brown, another one. That's exactly what I was going to say. When we're talking about like ways to flip the build to be unique, like there are some really good wide receiver plays in that range. Like, I mean, we've already talked about it. You've already emphasized it. I'm just going to continue to emphasize it, and no one's going to play him. Like you said, they're either going to play the elite running backs and the cheap receivers, or they're going to say, I'm flipping it. So I'm playing Kelsey, or I'm playing Diggs, or I'm playing Adams. I'm finding a way to get up to the elite wide receivers. No one is going to go sit there in the middle ranges, hit on those really good wide receiver plays. That's why I really like the Allen play as well, because Gibson is one of the really kind of interesting, cheaper running backs where the projection, the points per dollar looks really nice. And the way Gibson hits, we are a little concerned about the passing. It's where Washington does lead this game against the Chargers. And he's running. He's getting a lot of work. He scores a couple of touchdowns. And we do think he's probably going to be the goal line guy. Peyton Barber's not there anymore. That was an issue early last year. Gibson wound up scoring 10 touchdowns. A lot of scenarios where Gibson doesn't have that receiving work materialize, but still smashes these prices by having 120 rush yards and a couple touchdowns today. If he's that guy, then it also makes the Keenan Allen 15 catch scenario so much more likely. That's why I love that correlation. And it gets you into this middle part of the build that no one really wants to play. Yeah, I mean, you can do a lot of really interesting stuff that doesn't even touch on the stars or the scrubs, and that's it's really easy to look at the extreme value and say there's so much value on the slate. There's so much value in the middle range too. You can build entire teams that no one's going to play any of them, and that, I mean, all you need is a few like big ceiling games out of there, and there's absolutely scenarios where Keenan Allen or AJ Brown is a top scoring wide receiver in week 1. Suddenly you have this build that has none of the chalk, but has more upside to win the major tournaments. Like if you're playing a huge large field tournament, that's the way I would do it. I would not play basically any chalk. I mean, because typically that means you're giving up a lot of projected points. This week, I'm not sure you are.
The most interesting part to me is piggybacking on what you said, kind of in that tier, basically across all positions. If you think about the cheap guys that we have, they're the best, like point per dollar, like even like not even necessarily like point per dollar, but like almost like talent per dollar. You know what I mean? Because these guys are like superstar rookies that are 3,000, whatever. They're definitely good point per dollar plays. That's why they're chalky. But like none of these guys, I guess, aside from Marquez Callaway, but he even has some potential flaws in whether it be matchup or whatever, game script, etc. But like none of these guys are Stephon Diggs. None of these guys are Devontae Adams. Like I expect honestly good games out of all those cheap wide receivers. Like I like all those guys. But like Terrace Marshall is not going to go catch 10 balls for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. He might more than pay off 3K, but he's not going to, and I love Rondale. Rondale might catch a bunch of balls, but it's going to be a bunch of 3-yard hitches and touch passes and stuff. They're not doing the Stephon Diggs. They're not doing the Tyreek Hill, right? They're not scoring 3 touchdowns in the first half. Like it's just not happening. So when you take that into account and you think, okay, how can I get those guys that can do that, like across my entire lineup? It's because the whole field is going to go every time they come down to their last 2 spots or whatever, right? They got $12,000 left. They're going to be like, well, I can play Kamara and the $3,000 guy, and look how beautiful this looks. Or I can play DJ Moore and Joe Mixon or Antonio Gibson or Keenan Allen and Antonio Gibson, right? No one wants to do that because you're like, well, I got questions about the 6K guy and Alvin Kamara is the best play on the slate. And so I just used the 3K guy. When in reality, like, yes, Kamara can smash, but like if Gibson matches Kamara, Keenan Allen is almost always going to destroy that $3,000 guy. So you're really, it's not actually giving up really anything. It might actually be adding ceiling. Like I'm that's flipping a coin. That's maybe debatable, but you're really not giving up that much. And the leverage you gain in ownership, 40% depending on the contest you're playing, 40, 50% Kamara and 25% 3K guy versus 2 guys that are like, 10, 5% or whatever. And the ceilings are really not that different. That's the big thing that keeps jumping.
And that's the huge point. If you play McCaffrey or Kamara and they go off, everyone's coming with you, right? And you already made the great point that a lot of these 3K guys, they look like good point per dollar values essentially, but they don't have massive ceilings. I completely agree with you on that. I mean, it wouldn't be, I guess, that surprising if Arizona and Tennessee shot out that Rondale Moore had like a really, really big week 1. We've seen it from rookies before. It's something we emphasized on our earlier show this week, but it's not going to probably be in that Diggs, Keenan Allen, whatever range. It's the target dominance that matters at wide receiver, right? The ability to earn 15 plus targets. I think Moore is going to have upside to have maybe 8, 10 targets this week, but I don't think it's going to be, he'd have to be really efficient on that in addition, right? I think Keenan Allen has upside to get 20 targets. Like that's a different conversation completely. And I mean, the other thing about the McCaffrey Kamara thing is it's not that hard to, like, it might be hard to imagine other running backs scoring more than them. It's not that hard to imagine that the highest scorers on the slate are receivers. That's the point that goes back to the Thursday night thing. That's the thing that goes back to all these long-term trends. We saw something we talked about on an earlier show where there's this like gap between the haves and have-nots, the offenses that are more aggressive, they're throwing more. Diggs is the other one that's very clear now that like he could catch 15 passes in week 1. And it would not surprise me at all if he has a 40-point ceiling. If anyone does what Amari did on Thursday night, right? And it brings along some other players in that game. But if he has a 40-point ceiling, you don't need necessarily to like have rostered Christian McCaffrey or anything. If he, let me rephrase that. You don't need Christian McCaffrey to fail. He can still be good. Yeah. He can score 20 points and be kind of lightly used in his first, game back and lightly used by his standards rather than 100% snap share. Maybe they play him 80% and they use Hubbard a little bit. We don't necessarily know. But if he's at an 80% snap share, he scores 20, 22 points at his price tag, he's probably not going to be in the winning GPP lineups. It's going to be which of Diggs or Allen or somebody has this monster receiving game. That's the way the NFL is going. And there's these teams that are willing to throw 50 passes. That's actually where we know wide receivers, the higher variance position that actually has more ceiling. And I think we're only heading further that direction. And so, especially in tournaments, it's like, man, paying up for those running backs, I want to do it. It's comforting, but like the ceiling is with some of these receiver plays. And one of these dudes, I actually would say is more likely to outscore and be the highest score on the slate than the top price running backs, even though there are 3 really good running back options up there.
Yeah, and I like those, like you said, I feel comfortable with those running backs too, right? That's why they're in my cash game. They're in my cash game lineup. But like it's not that they don't have, we just feel more comfortable. It's not that they don't have their own concerns too, right? Like you said, Christian McCaffrey didn't play in the preseason. He got hurt last year. They've shown a willingness to use Hubbard. Again, maybe that could be wrong and he could play every snap again, but there's also little small red flags in those guys. Look, love Alvin Kamara. I'm not really even going to say a negative thing about him, but who is to say his role stays what it's always been? He plays 65-70% of the snaps, and Tony Jones Jr. just becomes Latavius, the old.
Or
Latavius
the Saints
Murray.
are just a dumpster fire right away. I think there's some low key potential for that. They might really struggle. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. So just thinking about, it's easy to get when you start building those teams and you're clicking the buttons to fall into that trap of, oh my God, look at this. I can get Kamara if I just go down to this guy, or I can get Dalvin if I do this or whatever. And if you just kind of take a step back and think about what's the way that I can get to the top of these tournaments and like build these, just like we kind of talked about it in the off season and, season long in best ball, like how do I build these super teams that I'm also like getting leverage on the field? Like there's a very clear path to me, kind of living in this mid tier. But then, if you do need savings, by all means, play one of those cheap guys, but do it on the team where it makes sense, right? If you're playing AJ Brown, that's when you can use Rondale Moore. If you're playing, if you're a sicko like me stacking up the Panthers, sure, toss Terrace Marshall on there, right? Because if he catches 2 touchdowns, that's great. But like, do it on the teams where it makes sense. That's the biggest kind of takeaway that I have, because when that ceiling comes from that cheap guy, you want it to be on the team that benefits the most from his ceiling performance, not just like sneaking in 20 points for 3K.
Completely agree. I would also note that there are additional cheap guys that I don't think are being talked about as much, but like the Philly receivers are a big one. I think that Philly Atlanta game could be really interesting. If you want to play Pitts, we talked about this on our first show. You could play Pitts, Ridley, Hurts, and stack that. And I think Hurts, you can do a single stack with 2 bringbacks because of his rushing ability. You could stack that with Devonta Smith's going to be popular. I think you can stack that with Jalen Reagor or Quez Watkins and think that those guys, it's pretty clear they're going to be playing in 3 wide receiver sets. It's pretty clear that Atlanta's pasty is not necessarily going to be amazing. And that this game, especially if you're playing it from an upside perspective, could have some interesting, scoring arguments. And I don't know that the gap between Devonta Smith and Reagor and Quez Watkins in terms of projection should be massive in week 1. I do think it should lean Devonta Smith's way, absolutely. But people are, I think, a little too confident Reagor's terrible and aren't even really considering Quez, despite the fact that he had a pretty good profile and did some really interesting things in preseason and has gotten nothing but positive buzz. So there's ways to get to even other cheap receivers that have pretty decent spots and potentially exciting games that people aren't even playing.
Yep. De'Ami Brown, if you do like your Washington, maybe it isn't Gibson, but maybe De'Ami catches a long touchdown, and that's how they get the lead against Keenan, against Keenan, and then Keenan comes back with all the catches. So real quick, people are posting where we're closing in on we got 10 minutes or so left, something like that. So I do want to hit some of these questions.
Okay.
Make sure real quick before we do that, everybody make sure you do the like and subscribe thing, right? Click the button, give us a thumbs up, do all those same things that everybody tells you to do when you watch videos. And RG Premium, I do want to talk about RG Premium. I know we're doing the NFL show and there's, tons of amazing NFL content on RG, but like every sport, it's incredible. Do you want to play college football? Like you can just sign up, read one article, check out Lineup HQ, and it's like a printing press. These guys are incredible. They're doing every sport. We're still grinding baseball. If you still want to play baseball, we have an incredible baseball team. RG Premium, that's my tout. I use the stuff that even I play the sports that I'm not an expert at, but I trust these guys and they consistently crush it. And then obviously for NFL, you'll get me and Ben and some other NFL folks. So I think we've hit mostly kind of on the themes of this slate. One question that I did think was funny, that did make me think about one spot that we didn't talk about, is Teen Raider said, "Will Brandon Cooks get points?" Which is just a funny question. And my answer is probably
way of phrasing that.
When I answer, and on FanDuel, my answer is probably not very many points. But the Texans are this weird team where I feel like we could look back and later today and be like, dude, the Jags and like Lawrence and Visca or Chark or whoever are playing the frickin' Texans, who we all know how big of a dumpster fire they are, and we're like not like loading up on Jags against them. And in part, it's because of like, I don't want to play Brandon Cooks. I don't want to play any of these Texans. So it leads me to kind of avoiding the Jags, and I feel like that could be an oversight.
It could be an oversight. I also, like, low-key don't think it would be surprising at all if the Texans won this game and then potentially never another game all year. I mean, they are at home. We don't really know how Urban Meyer's offense and Trevor Lawrence are all going to translate right away. Like, this might be the Texans' best chance to actually win a game. I think they're going to be so run-oriented. Tyrod Taylor's going to scramble and all of those things. I think this is going to be kind of it's probably my least favorite game from a point scoring perspective. I think Jacksonville and Urban Meyer is going to be willing to do that too. I think they're both going to run. It's kind of an under game for me, not a game that I want a ton of exposure to.
I think that makes sense. AG did ask who in cash. I will say I'm going to think about this some more before the slate actually gets here, now that some of the news that we had has made even more of these cheaper running backs fascinating. And I really would love to get Diggs in cash over one of those 3K wide receivers for me personally. And so as of right now, I'm actually kind of leaning to move Diggs in one of the elite running backs out. But right now, I think, and what I would probably even recommend, I play a little bit higher variant style of cash. What I would probably still recommend to everybody is just play the three stud running backs on both sides in cash. Let's see what we got here. Gibson, Najee, Mixon, and Eckler in a GPP. Do you have, setting aside, the correlation type stuff, do you have a preference on kind of that tier of running back?
I'll say Gibson. Mixon, I'm a little concerned the Bengals throw a lot. And I think he can still be very good, but I'm a little concerned that he gets sort of the Zeke thing that we were talking about, essentially. Najee, I mentioned sort of the same deal, where some of these running backs, they project for huge percentages of their offense, but if their offense winds up throwing at such a high rate, it can be challenging. Obviously, I don't think that's going to happen on every team. We're talking about probabilistic ranges, but that's the fragility of some of these workhorse running backs' production at this point in the modern NFL, is that their team throws way too much. So Gibson's the one that I think, from home favorites from a game situation perspective, will get his touches and is pretty solid.
I like that. Any love for Washington? Yeah, we talked a little bit about Washington. I think that they have a bunch of interesting pieces, especially, Curtis Samuel being out. I think, maybe not in small field contests with Diami, but I think he makes even an interesting pivot off of the other cheap guys. I mean, I'm never going to say a negative word about Terry McLaurin. I think Fitz is not the most ridiculous quarterback play, but I'm also just a fan of him, and I agree on Gibson, and Keenan makes this perfect bring back. Again, you don't have to stack up Washington, but if you like any of the Washington pieces, Keenan makes this perfect secondary correlation. Let's see what we got here. Thoughts on using Chubb with a KC stack in FanDuel GPPs, flipping the game script, thinking, playing it to the Chiefs, actually playing from behind with Chubb. What do you think about Chubb today?
I mean, I thought about that exact thing a couple times. It's so hard for me to play a running back who doesn't catch passes and also isn't a workhorse. I mean, that's my answer. It's like I just almost cannot play him. Like, it's really, me, I just can't click it. It's like, it's very hard for me to for some reason.
I think I do too. And I play, and full disclosure, I play mostly on DraftKings, so I think some of that seeps into my brain. So I do think on FanDuel, it's at least mildly interesting, because 100 yards and 2 touchdowns is absolutely
the TDs being so important. It's the first thing I thought too, is that it makes more sense on FanDuel, and I am the same way. I lean thinking wise more towards PPR, but it does make a lot more sense on FanDuel.
One thing I prefer when I still like to do the secondary correlation thing, like we talked about with Gibson and Keenan, or if you like Mixon and Jefferson or whatever, I do like to play those secondary correlations. My issue with like Chubb, as an example, with a stack of Kansas City, is that the way Chubb gets there and they get out ahead is they're having success running the ball, right? And as good as KC is, if Cleveland's grinding down the clock, I don't think Mahomes and multiple Chiefs, and are not ceiling. Like Tyreek can ceiling, or Kelsey can ceiling, but I don't know about the offense as a whole.
So actually, the one team where I did a similar build, I played Hunt, because I think there's scenarios where Hunt then plays, catches passes or whatever. He also has the touchdown upside, like not that different touchdown upside to Chubb. You get him at a lot cheaper of a price, and that game can explode like you're talking about. It's not required for, like it is for Chubb, that it becomes a grinded out slow game.
Yeah. All right, couple of quick ones, and then we'll wrap up, because this one's really funny. So I'm in Philly right now. I'm from St. Louis, but I'm in Philly, as you can see the hotel room behind me. And my buddy that came with me here for the MLB final for Draftkings keeps trying to sell me on Jalen Waddle. Okay, and I'm struggling with any Dolphins against the Patriots. It's just sort of how my brain works with attacking defenses like that. But Donnie does, like, it's a fairly decent question. Preston Williams is out, and we know Will Fuller is out. Waddle is another one of those super cheap guys. He's a little bit more expensive, $500 or $600 more expensive than those other guys. And he could make, we talked about the tight end thing. The Patriots tight ends are mildly interesting as well. Like, could be like the target leaders on an offense, even though I'm not super excited on them. Are you interested in Waddle at all? And maybe like another secondary correlation with a Patriots guy?
Vaguely. I mean, one of the other things I've done this week is build some early slate, build some late slate, build a lot of different types of lineups. I think I did they're in the afternoon window, right? The late window?
Yes.
So I think I did, Waddle, Jacoby Myers, little mini correlation in the afternoon window. I think if I was playing them, I'd probably limit, or Waddle. I think he's kind of too thin for the large slate personally, but I would maybe limit him to a late contest. I think you'll still get him at low ownership in the late, because you have the Green Bay, New Orleans, and the Cleveland, Kansas City games.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually. There's a lot less of those cheap guys. Callaway exists, obviously, but there's a lot less of those cheap guys. And I still, like you said, don't think he's going to be very owned. I will take this one. Any skill players worth chasing in the Broncos-Giants game? Not particularly for me. If you wanted to sell yourself on some Broncos, mainly I think Javonte, but it's really just a price play. And I struggle with that even now, just because we've got some more cheap running backs that have opened up. But that's like the grossest game on the slate. So,
well, Judy's reasonable, I think, as well on PPR.
Yeah,
because
and like Hamler, Judy, if you want to take some shots, I think in large fields, I don't think that's too bad. And then last one, this is the brutal one. So I will cover the defense thing really quickly, because William asked best defense for 2,400 or less on DK. And one thing that I'm actively avoiding is we have really high ownership on the Falcons defense because they're 2K minimum. And I don't get it, first of all, really. I understand the punting the defense thing, but pricing is so soft today. I don't really understand why you would need to do that. So if they were unowned and you said, look, I needed the savings or whatever, fine. But if a lot of people are going to go to the Falcons defense, I think that's one stand I would like to make away. So I know you asked for 2,400, but I kind of like the Bills at 2,500.
Yeah.
So if you could find 100 to get to the Bills, that would be my answer.
I mean, Houston would be the cheap one. That Jacksonville Houston game could be gross. Lawrence can make some, could turn the ball over. We don't know. I think Houston's bad, but they're going to be way less owned than Atlanta, and I don't think they're that much worse of a projection.
All right. That wraps us up. We got to get out of here. We got to go build some lineups. I believe Devin posted in the chat that crunch time is coming up to take everybody to lock. So stick around, and those guys will answer any more of your remaining questions. But enjoy week one. And for me and for Ben and for producer Devin, we will see you guys in week 2.
Back in the fantasy bar, 6 of my favorite plays for week 1 over on Yahoo, including my favorite correlation quarterback wide receiver stack, some value plays for you at the wide receiver position, a couple workhorse running backs I think are too cheap, and what stud should we pay up for this week? Belly up to the fantasy bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 1 edition, Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack specifically for the Yahoo users. We will be doing a 6-pack each and every week, covering Yahoo pricing for everybody out there. And while we're talking Yahoo, a lot of big changes this season. First of all, make sure you use promo code GRINDERS25 on your first deposit to get a free $25 over on Yahoo to try out the product. Also, they've added single day offerings now. That's right. Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football. You'll get those. The $1 Million Baller Contest is live for week 1. Just a $10 entry there and not even half full as of this time and as of this recording. So potential overlay on that thing. A live final this season on Yahoo as well. And finally, the Yahoo Cup, over $150,000 in total prizes, free to play, cumulative leaderboard. The winner is going to win themselves a live final seat in that thing, and who doesn't like free? So folks over at Yahoo have really stepped up their game this season. I'm excited to be playing over there and excited to be providing you 6 of my favorite Yahoo plays here for week 1. Now, before we get into those picks, do me a favor. First thing, click that thumbs up button on YouTube. That's the tip jar here in the fantasy bar. Helps us out tremendously. Second, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Going to be doing different videos each and every week. Don't want you to miss any of those, so subscribe. And lastly, if you're thinking about sports betting, if you've been into sports betting, whatever it may be, make sure you go and check out scoresandodds.com/beer. The link in the description of the video, but you're going to get tons of betting information there. Compare odds across different sports books, analytics, premium picks, myself included, will be providing premium picks this season. Tons of information over there, guys. Weekly, monthly, yearly subscriptions available in all sports at one low price. Click the link in the description of the video, scoresandodds.com/beer. All right, we got all the housekeeping stuff out of the way. Let's get into the plays here for this week. We're going to start at the running back position. A guy I think is just too cheap on Yahoo, and that's Joe Mixon, just $24. So I'm a big Joe Mixon fan, so take this one with a little bit of a grain of salt. I'm a big time believer in this guy this season. I know a lot of people have their concerns with Joe Mixon, but let's specifically focus on week 1. First of all, we mentioned that price, just a little bit too cheap here. You look at some of the more expensive running backs, and sure, who doesn't love Kamara? You guys know I love him, McCaffrey, and so on. But Mixon, a guy that can compete at that level and get the same level of touches, and we don't have to pay that big time price for him now. So Gio Bernard, we know, is now in Tampa Bay. I think that's going to lead Joe Mixon to even more involvement in the passing game. Nobody really behind him on that depth chart I'm really worried about at this point. And some may shy away from this matchup. Vikings historically have a pretty good defense. Not last season, 5th most fantasy points allowed to the running back position, and gave a lot of rushing touchdowns as well. 3rd most rushing touchdowns to running backs. I think Cincinnati wins this game outright, and they do it riding the back of their workhorse, Joe Mixon, leading us off here on Yahoo. All right, let's get you some more value at the wide receiver position. Another guy I think is too cheap, Jerry Jeudy of the Denver Broncos, just $15. So Jeudy in for a massive season, in my opinion. I think he's going to be the breakout guy at this position here this season. A lot of reasons I think that. We'll get into some of those here right now. Let's go back to last season. Look at some of the numbers. This guy got a ton of air yards. In fact, 6th highest air yards at the wide receiver position, yet only 65% of his targets were considered catchable with Drew Lock under center. Now you insert Teddy Bridgewater, and the matchup here between these two fits perfectly. Bridgewater, a very accurate passer. Jerry Jeudy, an incredible route runner. In fact, in my opinion, one of the best route runners we have in the NFL. So I think that's going to lead to great chemistry between these two. Great stats for us as well in the fantasy community. Now, I also think you're going to get very low ownership on this play. There's a lot of games on the marquee with bigger totals, around 50, higher than 50. This one's sitting below 42, so I wouldn't go nuts with this game, but I do like the spot here for Jerry Jeudy. I think he's a $25 receiver. We're only paying 15. Great opportunity to buy low here in week 1 on Jerry Jeudy. All right, back to the running back position. We're going to stick with our theme of guys I think are too cheap, and that's Antonio Gibson of Washington, just $25. So like Jeudy, I think Gibson going to take a big leap, and he has been a popular pick throughout the summer, ended up being a first-round pick in most of your fantasy drafts and best balls. And I think there's a great reason why. And here on Yahoo, I think it's a great buy low at just $25. Now, additions to this offense I think are going to make them even more explosive. Last season, we saw the struggle at the quarterback position. Well, you bring back Terry McLaurin, one of the best at the wide receiver position. Logan Thomas, an ascending tight end. You add wide receiver Curtis Samuel to the mix, an explosive play.
Good afternoon, everybody. The wait is finally over. It's a pleasure to kick off week one with you right here at RotoGrinders. I'm Justin Carlucci here with producer Devin, and we have Creighton and Mr. Tuttle. So we're on crunch time this year, guys. And whether you are just rolling out of bed and catching up on some Raheem Mostert news, or if you've been with RotoGrinders the entire morning, thank you for tuning in. So first of all, Creighton, Kristi, what's going on? Good to see you. How are you?
Oh, it's great to see you. Been excited for this day. Great to have NFL kicking off for us. And, you know, nothing like an NFL start with some big news right away, like you mentioned with Mostert. So great to see both of you guys.
Absolutely. What's going on, Dan? Mr. Tuttle, what's going on?
You know, had a nice little morning, drove down. I'm in Wisconsin, no legal sports betting here yet. So I'm about 30 minutes from the border, picked up some Starbucks, placed some bets in Illinois. Thought it was going to be a nice, calm morning. And then we get here and Trey Sermon's inactive. And I had all my CSVs done last night, was ready to roll, not expecting any news. And I think it's pretty big news, especially more than what we were expecting for week one.
Yeah, definitely. There's always something. You know, I saw the tweet early this morning, said no COVID news. Boom, ready to roll. I went to Pee Wee football to watch the kid play. You know, came back here. By the way, it opened up with a 70-yard touchdown. So, you know, Myerstown, number 11, hit his ceiling game right off the rip. So, you know, if you played him, you're sitting pretty for the Pee Wee football league. But yeah, I mean, just a little late news here. Everybody's making some adjustments, and we'll get into that eventually. A couple of quick plugs here. There's still a lot of room in the DFS OGs Fanduel contest. Make sure you get in there, get your spot, check it out. You know, it's 12:30 Eastern time here. You can still put some bets in. BetMGM, use promo code GRINDERSBET on BetMGM. Bet $10 to get $200 instantly. On Yahoo, I mean, there's a lot of great deals opening week and in general. I mean, you got to really take advantage of all these sites and what they offer. Use promo code GRINDERS25 on Yahoo for free $25 bonus for your first deposit. And of course, if you don't have RG Premium, you're missing out on a lot of great content. I mean, we're crushing NFL this season. There's podcasts and videos and articles for just about anything. You know, it offers single sport or combos. So whatever you play, if you don't play everything, you don't have to subscribe for everything. So a lot of customization that we offer here at RotoGrinders. And of course, make sure you like and subscribe to RotoGrinders and, you know, give us some feedback. We'll take some questions in a little bit here, but, you know, got about a half hour before kickoff. I can't believe it's finally here. So let's talk about some position by position stuff here. We'll breeze through this. I want to get some of your GPP and cash takes. You know, for both sites, feel free to tell me, you know, whatever's on your mind here. So let's start with quarterback, you know, as you probably predicted here. And again, check out the OGs contest over there. A lot of room left in it. So Kristi, who do you like at quarterback today?
Yeah, so for quarterback, I think if you're looking for some of the chalk plays, especially, you know, if you're looking on FanDuel, I think Josh Allen is going to carry quite a bit of ownership today. I think he's a real good play. I think Jalen Hurts is somebody that's really, you know, he's a nice price on both sites. Someone for you to consider. I also think paying up to for Mahomes. I think, you know, we have his ownership right around 12% or so. I like him quite a bit today. I think he could get lost in the shuffle a little bit. And I definitely like that Kansas City Browns game. And then I also think, you know, like for cash games too, you could certainly consider using a guy like Trevor Lawrence. It's his first game, but he's got a lot of weapons. His price is right. You know, definitely makes some sense there. Kyler Murray, I mean, that's a huge total in that game as well. I think quarterback ownership will be pretty spread out today. Just because there's a lot of great options. And I'll just maybe mention one of my favorite GPP plays this week. I'm rolling with Kirk Cousins. I like that Minnesota game. I like Justin Jefferson a lot, which we'll get into when we get to the receivers. But that's a couple of the GPP and cash plays that I like at quarterback.
Yeah, I like that leverage call there for sure on a little bit of Dalvin Cook leverage. You roll with some other Vikings there. Yeah, Tuttle. I mean, she touched on Josh Allen and Mahomes, both in kind of like vanilla matchups. But if there are two guys that are kind of matchup proof in the NFL at quarterback, it's probably Mahomes and Josh Allen. So, what are your thoughts at quarterback for cash and GPP?
Yeah, I mean, I agreed with basically everything Kristi said in terms of cash games. I think on DraftKings specifically, you're probably looking between Josh Allen and then Jalen Hurts. Those are kind of the price ranges that match up with a lot of the builds or lineup construction builds. FanDuel, I think you can play Josh Allen pretty easily. I think he's the guy that you just play in cash. For tournaments, though, lots of different ways we can go. My favorite guy and the guy that I have most exposure to in tournaments, and this is FanDuel specifically, his price stands out more there, is Trevor Lawrence. I think this Houston team is just going to be absolutely terrible. Both defensively, both offensively. So do worry a little bit of blowouts. Do worry about Urban Meyer just running the ball out with James Robinson. But that's the thing, though, as this passing attack gives you a lot of leverage off James Robinson, who's going to be one of the top owned running backs on FanDuel. So really like taking Lawrence and his pass catchers in tournaments.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much both of your analysis. One other guy I have in my pool is Russell Wilson, who's coming in at projected about 5% here. Xavier Rhodes is out for Indy in that back end there too. So I always like to target the quarterbacks that have the rushing upside as well. And I feel like that's kind of where you get your ceiling stuff. So I kind of like that Seattle Colts kind of game stack as some really low owned large field type of stuff for GPPs. But without further ado, let's move on to running backs here. And what are you guys doing with Raheem Mostert, most importantly? And tell me a little bit about who else you like today for GPP and cash. Kristi, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's interesting because Mostert was definitely one of the top plays that I liked before the news. So it really changes things up. But I mean, I think he's definitely one of the cash game locks in there today that you just need without Trey Sermon in there. He bumps up there quite a bit. We did have some other good value though for running backs. James Robinson in particular on FanDuel, just at 5,900, just such a great play. Makes a ton of sense over there. On DraftKings, you've got Antonio Gibson, which I mean, I think there's a lot of people that project him just to have a huge season. And his price is really, really great. And then at top, you've got a lot of choices. You've got Alvin Kamara, which is projected, I think, to be the most popular out of the top running backs. So you've got Kamara, you've got Cook, you've got Christian McCaffrey, all great plays. Love them all in cash as well. I think Joe Mixon could be used in cash, running it back. And I mean, I like that the Minnesota game quite a bit. I think he will definitely have some good opportunities there. And then Najee Harris, he's a rookie, but we know Pittsburgh loves to run the football. He's certainly going to have some opportunities, makes a very fine play. The guy that I think is going to get overlooked in all of this in a very high total game and someone that I have over the weight exposure on in GPPs is Derrick Henry. People like that game. I think he's just going low, definitely lower owned than he should be. I think we have him at 15% ownership now. Earlier in the week, it was under 10%, but he's certainly a target of mine. Last but not least, I want to also mention Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Here's a chance to get a guy at very low ownership. I think, in a high total game there too, we should not forget about him. Kareem Hunt torched them, 4 years ago, I think, right away to start the season. And I think there's definitely some GPP upside there.
Like it. All right, Tuttle, what's going on?
Yeah, so the thing is, Sunday mornings, we want to not overreact to news, right? But I think this Mostert news is actually worth reacting to. I do think we'll likely see Jermichael Hasty or Elijah Mitchell take up mostly the role that we thought Sermon would have. But I was trying to find someone from San Francisco that I like to target anyways, just because I think they're gonna be able to do whatever they want against Detroit, and that's typically run the ball a lot when they're in good matchups. So I definitely up my exposure to Mostert this morning. I don't think he's like a must play in cash games or anything like that, but I think he's a very strong option in all formats. Kristi mentioned most of what I would say. I'll get off a take here that is not popular, but Alvin Kamara on FanDuel, we have him projected to be the highest owned running back. I think he's a pretty good fade on FanDuel. Again, FanDuel, you have the half point per reception as opposed to the full PPR that you get on DraftKings. We have a lot of really good running back options in general today. And I also think New Orleans could find themselves where they're just in a spot to struggle to move the ball offensively. Like I know Jameis is starting. I know the storyline is that he's going to push the ball downfield more and they're going to be able to move the ball. But man, their receiving weapons are not good. Like they could just be, struggle with talent wise to actually do anything on offense. So I do like taking an underweight. I don't have Kamara on any of my 150 teams on FanDuel.
Hot takes from the get-go. I love it. Got to make your stand somewhere. Yeah, good stuff. Ownership looks like it's gonna be pretty spread out, with the exception of a few guys. Another guy I like for GPPs is Miles Sanders. I like that game as a whole. Not oftentimes do Miles Sanders is healthy, but it's week 1. So as far as we know, Miles Sanders is good to go. And he was top 10 in the league in total opportunities last year per game. So I like Miles Sanders. I like that game environment. And the other guy who has killer upside, mentioned him earlier this week on the podcast with Chief. I like Nick Chubb. I think that's an interesting game there. Obviously, if you're running Mahomes, some little game stacks there. Chubb still has killer upside, and he's getting lost in the shuffle. So moving on to receiver, and a lot of high-priced running backs in good spots. So maybe this is a chance for tournament players to pay up at wide receiver, because it doesn't look like there's going to be any serious chalk, at least on DraftKings, on the high end kind of thing. So Kristi, who are some of your favorite targets here, and what are you doing with Callaway, speaking about that Saints game?
Yeah, Callaway, I think he's much better play on DraftKings. I do think he is a good play. He's their number 1 receiver. So I do like that chalk over on DraftKings. I don't think he's necessarily a must play on FanDuel at his price, because there's some other plays in there. Some other plays that I like, and I think, like you said, because there's so many low priced guys that are really projected to be popular, I think spending up is going to be a little bit contrarian. For FanDuel, I like Jerry Jeudy quite a bit. He's at 5,500. I know his matchup isn't the easiest, but he has huge upside this year as a second-year receiver. Michael Pittman, I think Elijah Moore stands out as a good play, especially now that we got the news that Keelan Cole is out. Crowder's out, so that certainly puts him up there. Michael Pittman. For cash game plays too, I think, you could consider guys like Calvin Ridley, who with, no Julio Jones this year. He's sitting in a really great spot. Devontae Adams, if you're spending up, he's always a great play, and he's been in a lot of tournament winning lineups the last couple of years. So I think he's in a great spot. Diggs and Hopkins too, if you're spending up for cash game or tournament plays. And then I think, you could also play a guy that I like that I think will go somewhat overlooked because there are so many cheaper plays. I like Tyreek quite a bit, especially in my Chiefs stack. I just think, the guy has immense upside, and it wouldn't surprise us to see him have 3 touchdowns, at the end of the day. So he's someone that I like quite a bit too. So I guess those are a few of the guys. And then, I guess I'll mention too, a couple of we talked a little bit about Russell Wilson and his core. Metcalf, I think, is a fantastic play, both Metcalf and Lockett.
My bad. I was muting. I heard my dog barking in the background there. So anyway, Tuttle, do you have any takes that are hotter than your Alvin Kamara, your Kamara take at running back? So what are you doing at receiver here today? What are your thoughts?
Not hotter, but I do like the Jaguars receivers. I alluded to that. If you're wanting to get hot with that, then the guy to pick would be DJ Shark out of the trio. Most expensive option. He'll be the lowest owned. Kind of had negative news out of camp because of the fractured finger. But when he played last year, he was injured some last year as well. When he played last year, he was 4th overall in air yards per game. We know he's the downfield threat, big play threat. So, one long ball to him and he pays off his price tag. So that's probably my hottest take at receiver. But some other takes, Stephon Diggs is too cheap on FanDuel, I think. I think he'll stand out as a very heavily owned option there. And there was somebody else I wanted to mention. Marvin Jones Jr. is too cheap on DraftKings. I think he's fine. And I am forgetting there was somebody else I wanted to mention, but lost it.
Ton of options today. A lot of Elijah Moore buzz, and rightfully so, with Jamison Crowder being out, coming in at a pretty high ownership on DK for a rookie, but that price tag is down at the bottom there. But a couple other guys I like, I think for tournaments, Devonta Smith, he's projected to come in sub 5% on DK. I like that game as a whole. I don't think we're going to see any defense in that Philly Atlanta game. And Devonta Smith's a freak, was banged up a little bit, didn't have a lot of time in camp and on the field, and people kind of just forgot about him. So I actually like going to Devonta Smith over Elijah Moore and a lot of builds based on ownership and upside. I think it might be a little bit higher too. Michael Pittman Jr., his ownership projection actually came down a little bit, but we talked about Russell Wilson. We talked about Metcalf. I love the idea of running it back with Michael Pittman Jr. In that game. So about 15 minutes left here. We'll talk tight ends, and we could throw in some defense if we want to, but we want to get to some questions more importantly here. So tight ends, you got Kelsey up top, super high floor, super high ceiling as usual. Then Kyle Pitts, you want to talk about a rookie with a very low price tag, a high projected ownership, new coach, Arthur Smith, new system. We know Kyle Pitts is a specimen of an athlete. I don't know, a lot of divided takes across the industry on Pitts, I feel. What are your thoughts at tight end, Kristi, and talk to me about Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, I really like him. And I that is certainly not a hot take. I think everybody agrees his price is too cheap. He's in a great system. I definitely want to take advantage while his price is this low. And so he's someone that I'm certainly, I have a pretty condensed pool for tight end this week. Pitts and Kelsey lead the charge for quite a bit for me. But I think Pitts is good chalk. I really do. And, I like that Atlanta game. You mentioned the Atlanta Philly game quite a bit. It just makes a ton of sense. And, again, he's going to jump up probably 2K here in the next couple of weeks on his price tag. So let's certainly take advantage. Just a couple of other guys that I like on the tournament side. I think TJ Hawkinson, I don't know where his ownership will be exactly. I think we have him at 10% right now. They do have an implied a low implied team total, but he's the guy in that offense. And so I like him. I think he could be a top 5 tight end by the end of the year. I really do. He certainly has the talent. Logan Thomas, I think is someone too, that you could take a look at. And then lastly, I would say, I think John O. Smith is a sneaky tournament play. He's 4,900 too on Fanduel. And he was just someone that stood out that could be a good value. New England likes to utilize the tight end, and he'll certainly get overlooked. But I'll certainly be definitely overweight with Pitts and Kelsey carrying most of my ownership this week.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. Tuttle, you got anything different, or what are your thoughts at tight end?
No, and I remembered what I was going to say at wide receiver. Not flying under the radar by any means, but Devontae Adams, Marshawn Lattimore was downgraded to questionable on last night's injury report, which is notable.
Good point.
Saints were already struggling with their secondary and having healthy bodies. So that's notable. As far as tight end goes, like I'm mainly with the 3 main guys. My exposure is highly concentrated on Pitts, Kelsey, and Kittle. It's hard to find anyone with the upside to match those guys. Like there are other guys that might, catch a touchdown. Gerald Everett might catch a touchdown. Tyler Conklin might catch a touchdown. But the top 3 guys just have like actual potential double-digit targets type of thing and can score touchdowns as well. So I do think there's a pretty big drop-off. And like I think taking flyers on some of the cheaper tight ends is completely viable, but most of my ownership is concentrated upon the 3 big guys.
All right, let's jump to some questions here. We got 12:48 Eastern. We're almost ready to kick off the new season. And obviously we had the Raheem Mostert news. If you're just tuning in, it's more so Trey Sermon news. Trey Sermon is a healthy and active. So that obviously bumps up Mostert's usage a little bit there. The thing with the Niners is, just before we get into questions, is like Garoppolo isn't a high volume pass guy. Like you love all the matchups, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, but like the volume, you don't know where it's going, right? Because they're like running the ball quite a bit. So I don't mind playing some Debo, some Ayuk in kind of the right correlated tournament builds, but it's just, if you get 4 targets, kind of like the AJ Brown thing, he's such a yak monster. They got to make the best of those targets, and they can, but it's tough to really target some of those Niners because you just don't really know where the ball's going, although Detroit is just a great matchup. Let's jump to some questions. Let's see here. Jalen Waddle ? I guess Kristi, is Waddle on your radar?
He isn't. If you kind of look back, I was looking back at some of the rookie receivers, that kind of start out, and usually, they don't make a huge splash on week one. So he's not someone that's really on my radar. He's someone that I anticipate using down the road, but not today.
Tuttle, a question I see a little further up there, and you basically touched on it. Is Mostert a cash game lock now?
Not a lock, but definitely a solid play.
Okay. Kristi, what do you think? Mostert in cash or no?
I think he's a good play in cash. Yeah, I think he's someone that I would put in there for sure.
Okay. Cheap RB play, Edmonds ? We touched on that Titans Arizona game. Kristi, I think you did. You got any Edmonds? What are your thoughts on Edmonds in that game?
I did 150 lineups too in that $3 tournament on FanDuel. I have a little bit of exposure, but he's definitely not someone I'm concentrating on this week. There's a lot of other cheaper guys that I love, like with Robinson and Mostert and Najee Harris and such. So not as much for me.
Okay. Tuttle, Chase Edmonds, you in or out?
I think it is okay as part of game stacks. I wouldn't go there anywhere else, I don't think.
Okay, I got a cheaper cash question for Kristi. Who are some of the cheaper cash receiver plays on FanDuel that you're interested in?
Okay, so cheaper cash game plays on FanDuel. I would definitely say I like Elijah Moore now. He definitely jumped up into the mix. I like Michael Pittman quite a bit. I think he's a fine play. Callaway, I think, is a very good play for cash. And Judy will probably be used more for tournaments, but I think you could consider him for cash too.
Okay. Tuttle, Tyler Kroft, only healthy tight end for first pass offense Jets. Thoughts on Tyler Kroft? We talked about a kind of a condensed tight end pool here. What are your thoughts on Kroft?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. You're just hoping to get a touchdown for cheap. I think it's possible. So it's fine if you just want to do it for lineup construction thing. But I think if you're looking for a true ceiling game out of the position, it's only going to come out of a few places.
Okay, I got about 8 minutes left, guys. Here we go. I've been waiting for these 2v2 swap questions and things like that are popping into the chat here. So we'll start off here. I'll go Kristi, then I'll go to Tuttle. Tannehill and T. Higgins, or Kyler Murray and Michael Pittman?
I would probably go Kyler Murray, Pittman.
Okay. Tuttle, thoughts?
Yeah, that's the side for me.
Okay. Elijah Moore and Bills defense. A little bit of defense. Elijah Moore and Bills defense, or Marvin Jones and Atlanta defense for DK GPP. Kristi, do you got to lean either way there?
I would say the first one, Moore and Bills defense.
Okay. Tuttle?
Yep. Agreed.
All right. DK cash last piece. Mixon, Najee Harris, Antonio Gibson, or James Robinson. A lot of players there.
So
cash.
any one of those?
Yep.
I like Antonio Gibson a lot on DK.
Okay. Tuttle, cash thoughts?
Of those guys, it's Mixon for me.
Okay. DK GPP, Pitts and Higgins, or Deontay Johnson and Tyler Conklin?
The first one.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. All right. I agree. I'm with you on the Pitts Higgins for sure. Pittman.
Do not flex Tyler Conklin.
Yeah.
Yes. I agree. Don't flex Tyler Conklin. Let's see. FanDuel, Pittman, Devontae Smith, or Manny Sanders on FanDuel. I guess just pick one, Kristi. You have any thoughts there?
Okay, would you Pittman, and what was the middle one?
Devontae Smith or Emmanuel Sanders?
I would say Pittman.
Okay. Tuttle?
Same answer.
Yep, I'm with Pittman too. Although I do like Devontae for large field GPP stuff.
Right.
Brandon Cooks or Devontae Smith in the flex, Kristi?
Brandon Cooks or Devontae Smith in the flex.
Tough one.
I'd probably go Cooks actually.
Okay. Yep. Tuttle?
I'm Devontae Smith.
Okay. I will say Cooks was projected really low, so I was kind of intrigued. Everybody just kind of forgot about him because Tyrod Taylor's throwing them the ball, and I get it. Totally get it. About 5 minutes left here. We're going to try to get through as many of these as we can. let's see, with Falcons defense so high owned, is playing Devontae Smith against them in the same lineup a good idea to be different? So would you play, do you have a problem with playing Devontae Smith and Falcons defense together, Kristi? Would you do that?
I wouldn't.
Okay. Same thoughts here. Tuttle, do you agree?
I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, because I still think it, like, if it's you don't have money to spend at the defense and you're stuck in the 2K range, I still think Falcons defense is the best. You're not expecting them to pitch a shutout, right? You're hoping them to get some sacks, potentially a defensive score. Not the worst thing in the world, but I generally do try to avoid it.
I'm going to give this one right back to you here, Tuttle. FanDuel cash. Alvin Kamara, because I know your Kamara stance here. Alvin Kamara and Michael Pittman for cash, or Mostert and Ridley.
Yeah, I do like number 2.
Mostert, Ridley. Kristi, what do you think? Kamara, Pittman, or Mostert, Ridley for FanDuel cash?
I would say Mostert, Ridley too. Yeah.
Okay. Jerry Jeudy, or any other recommendations in that price range for DK cash? Let me pull up that price range here. What is Jeudy off the top of my head? I don't know.
It's like high 4s, I think.
High 4s. Ton of options on DK. What the low price tag is this week?
Yeah, he's 48.
48.
I think you could go T Higgins. It's 47.
Yeah. T Higgins. You can even eat a little bit of salary. I know people don't generally like to do that in cash, but there's so many guys like sub 4K even that have similar projections, similar upside, and will be owned. My personal preference is I like playing people who are going to be owned in cash. So I think you can even eat a little bit of money if you want to go a little bit cheaper and don't kind of have anxiety about leaving that money on the table that many people do. And even I have that issue sometimes too. DK GPP in the flex. We'll start with you, Kristi. Miles Sanders or Tyler Lockett, GPP flex.
GPP flex. I would go Sanders. You mentioned him as a good GPP upside play. A lot of times I kind of prefer to get some of those running backs in the flex spot. So I would go with Sanders.
Okay. Tuttle?
Yeah, I don't want to, but I'm going to take the easy way out on this one. I think both are similar plays. I like both. I would defer to your lineup construction. So, if you have some Falcons players in your lineup, let's go Sanders and bring it back with him. If not, Lockett is fine.
Okay. DK cash, Mostert, or I'm assuming this is Mike Davis. Yeah. We'll stick with you, Tuttle. What do you think there?
Gosh, both are really good plays. I think I'll go Mostert, but I think both are very good plays.
Yeah, Kristi, thoughts?
Yeah, I think Mostert for cash, but I think using Davis now in GPPs will be certainly more contrarian. So yeah, it's close though.
Yep, got about 2 minutes before kickoff, guys. Make sure you hit those save buttons on your lineups, or you're dumping in those CSVs. Whatever you're doing, don't lose track of time. Get those lineups in. A couple more questions here. We'll try to get to them. I'll just bounce back and forth here. Tuttle, I'll start with you. DK cash, Pittman, Mostert, or Robinson and Marvin Jones?
Gosh, see, this is why I don't want to play DK cash today. We're looking at 2v2 coin flips. I'll give it to Pittman, Mostert, but it's so close.
Okay, Kristi, I'm going to bounce this one over to you. Is paying up for top 3 running backs a viable DK cash option? Kristi.
I do. I still think, there's a lot of good guys and they're not priced outrageously yet. So yeah, I do. I think having one in your cash game lineup is perfectly fine.
Okay. Tuttle, FanDuel, Mostert or Robinson?
My personal builds, I have more Mostert. I think if Robinson's still going to project better than Mostert. I think Robinson is a completely fine cash game option. But in my personal builds, I have more Mostert.
All right. Awesome. We got 1 minute left here. We're almost through all these. I don't know if we're going to make it. FanDuel cash, Kristi, Pittman or Callaway?
For cash, I go Callaway.
All right. Tuttle, Allen and Bills D or Hurts and Denver D for FanDuel cash? That game locks right now.
Gotta go Allen and Bills.
Okay, we'll go one more here. It's the last one. FanDuel cash, Ridley, Najee, Cincy D, or Pittman, Kamara, Bills D. So it's Ridley, Najee, Cincy D, Pittman, Kamara, Bills D. Good old 3v3. Any thoughts, Kristi?
Yeah, I think I'd go Pittman Kamara, Bills D.
12:59. We made it. All the questions in chat.
Boom.
That was a sweat dealing with some late news here. And man, what are you most excited about today, Kristi? What are you looking forward to the most here? The week 1 of the NFL.
Oh, it's just so much fun just to have like multiple games up at the same time, watching the Red Zone channel. I mean, just the excitement of week 1. So just can't wait to watch a lot of different games.
Tuttle, what's going on your TV first? What are you throwing on?
Getting Red Zone up on 1, and
Yep.
then I'll have to do the Jags if I can get them, because I have so much exposure to their offense.
Oh man, good old week 1. Things you never thought you'd say 6 months ago.
Right.
I'm having a ton of Jags in week 1. Here we are, and I'm excited to see Trevor Lawrence and what he brings to the table. Producer Devin had a long morning. Big shout out to him. We had a lot of great content. I don't know. Can you pop in on this show, Devin? Are you able to reveal yourself or not? Do you want to pop in and give us any hot takes?
I have a lot of Joe Burrow stacks, so
right.
We'll see how that works.
All right, cool. Yeah, Joe Burrow is one guy we didn't really touch on too much, but comeback player of the year maybe. I don't know. We'll see. So, anything else, guys, or are we getting out of here and throwing some football on?
I think it's time to watch some football.
Throw
Can't
some
wait.
football on.
Yeah. What a terrible question. That was the worst question I asked in the last half hour. But yeah, definitely check out RotoGrinders Premium. We're crushing it this year. Creighton and Tuttle do an awesome job as well. Tonight I'll be on Sunday Night Showdown with Keith, so I'm really looking forward to giving some hot takes on there and building some lineups. And the show never stops here at RotoGrinders. So enjoy week 1, everybody. For Devin, for Kristi, and for Dan, I'm Justin. Good luck.